Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Is everybody set? Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome. Do we have everyone? I don't see Dean yet. I don't know if he's coming or not. Otherwise, I think we're okay. We have good evening and welcome to the October 19th, 2020 version of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Plattsburgh, where we will hear various applications. On the agenda this evening is 2198, 2199, the Vilas Home, 61 Beekman Street. Those are extensions of previously granted variance and special use permit. We have 2250 Nellie Bonville at Hillcrest Avenue, a request to build a small mudroom extending into the side yard setback. Joseph Whalen, Class B variance, request to cover existing concrete patio. Side yard setback issue, not front yard. Maria Hurto, 6 South Acres Road, special use permit for a fence, 8-foot fence in the side yard. Catherine Grabda and Crystal Lewis, Class B area variance to use a portion of a building as a private fitness studio. 2 principal primary buildings on one lot at Guy Way. And then, of course, the City of Plattsburgh is the applicant for the special use permit to amend the boundaries of an existing planned unit development and a special use permit for use of apartments on the first floor of a multi-story building within a planned unit development. We'll talk about that, but just so everybody understands, that is allowed in a planned unit development in that central business district, nowhere else. Anyway, all of these are shown to be having a public hearing. We'll discuss them for each one, but when we get to the City of Plattsburgh, 22 Durkee Street, we're going to have some ground rules for the public comments, and I think we're going to do them after we've understood what the final proposals are that the city's proposing for prime. So, the first applicant, the first 2 cases, 2198, 2199, Vilas Home, 61 Beekman Street. Ethan, bring in the lucky contestants. Is that it? Just you, Eli?
It's just me. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Eli. This is a not that I don't like you, Charlie, by the way, but Ethan, can you tell me why Charlie's on during a he's not representing you, is he, Eli?
No.
Okay. Why is somebody from another application on?
I'm trying to address that right now. I don't see it up on mine.
He's using up his time. Anyway. Hi, Eli. What I wanted to talk about is that this is the Vilas Home. We have your applications to extend the previous 2 actions we took. One was the Class B variance to extend the Class B variance, which was parking, I believe, correct?
Yeah, yep.
And the other was a special use permit, request to extend a previously granted special use permit. Both of these were previously approved by us. The seekers were approved. Actually, we didn't, I don't know if we did the seekers. I think that this was a coordinated review, and didn't the planning board do the seekers for this?
Yeah, I think they were lead agency.
They were the lead agency. So we voted on these. And I actually talked to Joe a little bit about this earlier today. And Milena from the planning office had asked, why was this necessary? And why? Because the planning board does not have limits on what they grant. They approve a site plan. You don't build it for 2 years, the site plan's still approved or whatever. Subdivision, same thing. And the question was brought up, do we need to have, first of all, we have them, so we have to deal with this tonight. But should we or do we need to have them? And I think Joe and I both agreed that our issues are different, and you know, conditions can change. So that a previously granted variance, if they haven't changed, that's a different story. But they could change so that something could affect these, but perhaps these are tied to the 6-month period for building permits. Once you get a building permit, Kyle, you have 6 months to start, correct? Yeah, is that a yes? You're muted. That's okay. So one discussion might be to
Yes.
change this to just change this to a year for both of them, so that people didn't have to, you know, what if you get something in October, or like Eli, where, you know, he gets it in the spring, and you got to go through all this other stuff, and then all of a sudden it's November and he can't start or something. So just so you know, that's a separate thing. But I don't, Eli, has anything about this changed in any way, this application?
No.
And do you have all of your approvals otherwise from planning board and everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. First, I'm going to open it to the board to see if there are any questions. Then I'm going to open it for public comment. And then we're not even doing a seeker. The only question is going to be these two things, if we approve an extension of a previously granted variance and a previously granted special use permit. So are there any questions from the board regarding this?
How long of an extension do you need, Eli?
I'm planning to start construction in the spring, so it really depends on the ground. So I would, if I could get a year, that would be great. But 6 months is a little tight because we're that's right around March, April. So a year would be great, but more 6 months.
But isn't the 6 months, Ron, to time of building permit?
Say that again. I'm sorry. This is tied to the building permit, but that's from when he gets the building permit and when he starts. You haven't got the building permit yet, have you?
No,
Have you gotten the building permit?
I haven't. I think that if I remember correctly, the rules say you just have to start substantial construction. And I'm not sure if that's tied to the building permit or tied to the zoning. But
both.
I do remember reading that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
both. So it's conceivable that he could apply for a building permit based on this as late as April, let's say, as an example, or earlier, and then start in the spring. Is what I'm saying. In other words, this is. I guess I would say that I don't feel comfortable with 6 months because I think that's too tight. 2, is that what you're asking, Scott? So.
Yes, that's it, basically it. I just wasn't sure how 6 months with building permit kicks in. If he gets his building permit in 5 months, then does he have 6 months to start from then?
Yeah. Yes. So I don't know if do we want to do this? Well, first of all, there's a question. Can we do this for more than 6 months? We may not be able to. Right? The duration is set. You know, some things, like if you get a use variance or if you get a special use permit, those things don't expire. You know, you get permission to use something in a certain way. This is a different, well, I'm sorry, the special use permit expires, but certain variances you get, like once you build your porch or whatever, we still have to start within a certain amount of time. So I think that it probably is tight, but you may have to come back in the spring.
Yeah. Does the if I get a building permit in say 4 months from now, does that extend me for another 6, or am I still at 6?
I would say that one way to look at it would be that if you apply for the building permit in 4 months, you've started construction.
Okay.
You've initiated, right? You've done permitting.
Mm-hmm.
The permitting can take. Let's assume that this was a brand new application, not an extended one, and you got tonight the variance and the special use permit,
Mm-hmm.
and you said, now I'm going to start permitting. And 4 months from now, you're doing a permit is different. In other words, that is a start to construction in the sense that you're finishing engineering and obtaining a permit.
Okay.
So I would say, Joe's not here, but I would tell you that to me, and I've done, gotten a lot of permits. My feeling would be that once you start that construction process, frankly, surveying is part of the construction process. Laying out is part of the construction process.
Yeah.
So that I would think that I'm going to tell you though that I'm not sure we can do it for a year or do it for 8 months. I think we can do it for.
I think 6 months would be fine. That would be great, and hopefully I'll be able to get my permit and get things started by then. So if that's what you guys can do, then that would work for me and keep me on track.
Okay, Scott. Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Ethan, does anybody have their hand raised and wants to come on and make public comment?
No one's raised their hand. Ron.
Oh, okay. Are you the one that sees that, Kyle, not Ethan?
We both do, but I'll be the one.
Okay. So there's nobody making public comment, asking to make public comment. All right, then I'm going to close the public comment portion for this. And we're not doing a seeker. The only thing, and we have two separate items, item 2198, 2199. So I'm looking for a motion on 2198 to extend the Class B variances previously granted for the Vilas Home project.
I'll make a motion in regards to Appeal 2198 for Vilas Home LLC at 61 Beekman Street to extend a previously granted Class B variance as it was previously approved for 6 months.
I'll take a second from
I'll second it.
Kelly. Okay. So I'll get you on the next one. Okay. So now we're going to have to vote on this with a chat with Lisa. Right, Lisa? We're chatting with you, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so a yes vote is to approve the extension.
Okay, so Megan, yes.
Who'd you say?
Megan?
You're muted, Meg.
Yes.
Kathleen, yes.
Yes.
Kelly, yes.
Yes.
Ron, yes.
Yes.
And Scott, yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me turn chat off for a second. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. Secondly, I am looking for a motion on appeal number 2199, Vilas Home LLC, 61 Beekman Street. Special use permit, request to extend a previously granted special use permit. This again is for exactly what we did before and for a period of 6 months.
I'll make a motion in regards to 2199 Vilas Home at 61 Beekman Street to extend a previously granted special use permit for 6 months as previously approved.
Second.
Who seconded it? Kathleen. Okay. Okay, so a yes vote to Lisa is to approve the extension for 6 months of the special use permit.
Kelly, yes.
Yes.
Scott, yes.
Yes.
Kathleen, yes.
Yes.
Ron, yes.
Yes,
And Megan, yes.
Yes.
okay. So we are all set. Eli, you're all set?
Thank you.
We look forward to it. I would get together with Joe and Kyle to just verify what you're doing about when you apply for the permit,
Mhm.
so that it happens within that 6 months, and how that's going to define a substantial start to construction. I do believe actually that permitting, engineering and permitting, but especially permitting, should start to qualify you for doing this. And that permit's going to have that 6 month period. So it's not like you can say, I'm going to apply for the permit and not do it again for 5 years. I know that's not your intent, but relative to the law. So you're all set. So thank you very much, Eli.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks a lot. Have a good night, everyone.
Good luck. Have a good project. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Nellie Bondil, 22 Hillcrest Avenue, a Class B area variance request to build a small mudroom extending into the side yard setback. Hi, Nellie. How are you? You're muted, so you have to turn on. You're muted, and that's bad. Touch the space bar.
Base. Oh, I got it. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. How are you, Nellie?
Good. How are you?
Good. Okay. You have a Class B variance to build a small mudroom at 22 Hillcrest Avenue.
Yes.
And it's my understanding that, is it completed already?
Yes. Yes. So
And that
I'm
was
afraid.
because, and why was that? Because you didn't know you needed a permit, or?
Yes. Well, I was mistakenly told that I could get one, but that if it wasn't over a certain amount of square footage, that it didn't matter. So I'll definitely never listen to any clients again. But yeah, because I'm a hairstylist. So yes, I was mistakenly told by a lot of people that it didn't matter. But
Mhm.
obviously that was
You
wrong.
know, yeah, you know who are the best ones to ask her that? The
Yeah.
building inspector.
Yeah.
They know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's okay, I have you out of order here, sorry.
Okay.
Not out of order, I mean in my stuff here. You're not out of order. Okay. So as I look at your application, it is a 58-inch by 117-inch extension of the main structure, and it is a. Kyle, can you explain exactly what the deficiency is?
Say that again.
No, I'm asking Kyle, not you.
Oh,
I'm asking the building inspector to tell us, but Kyle, you're muted. Tell us what the deficiency is.
All right, I can share that worksheet if you like. The deficiency is 10 inches on the south property line. Well, I'll share it so you can see it, and I'll explain it.
Yeah, okay.
All right, as you can see, she has an 80% deed of deficiency. So her required side yards are 8 minimum and 20 total.
Right.
She's got 10 on one side, and she had 14 with a total of 24. What was existing before it was built. She has 10 and 9 feet 2 inches, which leaves her 10 inches short from the total side yard.
10 inches?
10 inches.
10 inches, okay. All right, thanks, Kyle. So I'm going to open this to the board to see if you have any questions regarding the 10-inch deficiency on Nellie's mudroom to keep her warm. I'm looking for questions. Anybody have a question?
I'm just curious as to
No?
what was, there before this was built.
It was a like slab of concrete that went out just as far as like the mudroom does. And it was just kind of becoming a hazard in the winter, even though we'd salt it or whatever, like put stuff on it. It was really, really slippery. So it was just like a big slab of concrete stairs was there before, the same size, but it was just concrete.
Okay, so you just enclosed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? If not, Kyle, can you tell me if there's anybody waiting for, I'm going to open the public comment period, the public hearing. Do we have anybody waiting to make a comment on this, Kyle?
No one has raised their hand or risen their hand.
Okay. Then I'm going to close the public hearing comment period, public hearing, and I'm going to take a look at the seeker with everyone. And, you know, Nellie, you had question number 2, you started to do it right, then you did it wrong. That's okay.
Yeah.
Question number 2 has to do with, question number 2 on the seeker has to do with, does the proposed action require a permit, approval, or funding from any other government agency? And you said no, but that's okay. We're going to fix it for you.
Oh.
So it is yes. It is yes. Okay. And you need 2 things. You need a variance from the ZBA.
Okay.
Okay. Don't worry. Almost everybody misses this question. Almost everyone. And you also need a building permit from the building inspector's office. Okay?
Okay.
So that's the question. That's question number 2. Other than that, if people have questions about the seeker for this little mudroom. If not, I am looking for a motion regarding the seeker.
I'll make a motion for appeal number 2250. After review of the short environmental assessment form, that in section 2, no or small impact may occur, be checked for items 1 through 11, and the chair be authorized to sign the second box, that this proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impact. Sign.
Okay, who wanted to second that? Megan, did you say? Yes, I thought you did. Okay, so this one we're not going to do text to Lisa for. All in favor, raise their hands on the screen so we can see it and say aye. Aye, okay,
Aye.
so that's the seeker, Nellie, don't get excited, that's only the seeker.
Okay.
You're almost there, though. And I'm gonna do that, and now we've closed the public hearing, so I'm looking for a motion regarding, appeal number 2250. I just feel like I'm burying my phone.
Kyle, can I just get a clarification on, she's
Yes,
more than 10 feet from her property line. The other side is what is causing the deficiency?
No, she has 10 feet on the north line. On this side is where the difference is. I can actually show you a picture real quick. You want to?
Because she's showing it as 138 inches.
Yeah. This side right here is where it's short. It's 138 from the house. When we did the measurements, we took the lot width, the width of the house, and the presumed north property line to find out how much was left. And there was 10 inches left from after all the calculations.
Okay, so we don't know exactly where it is necessarily. We're just going based on the width of the lot minus the house and the addition.
Yeah, we don't know exactly because we don't know what the property line is, but we do know it's 10 inches short
Okay,
based on the numbers provided and
right.
and the deduction.
do you agree with the 58 inches of the addition?
Yeah, I believe we do, but I think that it was just, I think it was calculated wrong. I think they put the line to the addition, but the line was supposed to go to the original house. So if you take that original, if you took the line to the original house and then deducted that 58, you would have been close to where, close to the number. You know what I'm trying to say?
No.
Okay.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, as we write a motion, deficient in 10 inches aggregate and a 58-inch addition off the house, is that 58-inch a valid number?
I believe it is. I believe it is, because I think, like I said, I think that they pulled the measurement for the property line measurement to the main house and then didn't subtract the 58 inches.
Okay,
Am I kind of clear?
kind of. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, now that you say it that way, it's clear. All right.
Okay.
I'll make a motion in regards to appeal 2250 for Nellie Bonville at 22 Hillcrest Ave for a small addition extending 58 inches south off the south side of her house that causes her side lot aggregate to be deficient by 10 inches. A yes vote is to approve.
Seconded by
A second.
Kathleen. Okay. So a yes vote to Lisa is to approve this for Nellie.
Okay, Scott, yes.
Yes.
Kelly, yes.
Yes.
Kathleen, yes.
Yes.
Megan, yes.
Yes.
Sorry. Ron, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So Nellie, you're all set. Go get a
Thank
zoning
you.
permit.
Yes,
You're
thank
welcome.
you so much. Do I sign off
problem.
now? Or thank you.
Thanks. You're all set. Okay, that was 5-0, yes. All right. The next application is Joseph Whalen, 25 Prospect Avenue. We're waiting for him to come on. This
Okay.
is Joe.
Yes. Yes.
Joe, are you on a phone or both?
The phone.
Okay. So we're not going to get to see what you look like. Never good. No. It's okay.
That's good.
That's okay. Joe, not unfortunately or fortunately, but Megan Whedon claims some kind of a relationship like an uncle or something. So we're not going to let her vote because it could influence her vote that you're her uncle.
I have no clue.
That's right. But anyway, so Kathleen Inslee, Kelly Porter, Scott Germain, and PJ Whitbeck and I will be taking care of you this evening. And Joe, you have a Class B variance request to cover the existing concrete patio and steps with pressure-treated deck and extend the length of the deck into the front yard setback. But that's not correct. It's not the front yard setback. And so Kyle is going to explain to us what the deficiencies are. Correct, Kyle? With it unmuted. You're muted. There you go.
All right. So it appears that as long as that deck that's being built is not coming farther than the front of where the old garage was, it's not a front yard setback issue. The issue is extending the deck to the north property line. You're making the nonconformance larger, and you are short on a side yard setback. That makes sense.
Right. Do you have that sheet done for this?
Yep. 1 second here. I'm trying to work 3 screens, so.
Okay.
Okay. So what's existing is 7 feet on one side, 10 on the other, for a total of 17. And when the deck is extended, it's the same because to the end of the building already, but you need a total of 19.675, so you're short 2.675 feet for your total side yard.
Which he was already deficient.
Yes, he was already deficient, but he
Right.
larger.
So-
Yes, correct.
Right. So we talked about this in the pre-meeting a little bit, but all it's doing is, I don't even want to use the word aggravate because that's too strong. The house from end to end is 10 feet. It's just that you're adding more of it that makes it this 2 feet or whatever. What's the difference?
2.675.
2 points total.
No,
Yeah,
the,
total.
But he was already deficient that anyway.
Yes.
Not like he's going past the end of the house.
Correct.
And
Right.
now the plot plan shows 10 feet on each side. Is that incorrect?
Yeah, our measurements, again, using satellite imagery and the measurements, came out to only 7 on the south side.
which side is okay? On the other side.
Yes, and
So
the house to the
right.
property line appears to be 10, based on fences and property.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So really, the issue is still he meets the minimum, the 10. Actually, it's less, right? Did you say, what is it, 9.7? Is it 9.7 for the minimum one because of the deeded deficiency?
It's 7.87 to the minimum.
7.87. So,
Yeah, so-
realistically, the 10 is more than enough. It's the other side, the 10 foot, that's 7 feet, and he needs, it's only really 0.87 feet that he's deficient.
Well,
Does that make sense, or am I?
not with the total setback. The total setback's 19.675.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's 2.75 feet, but it's even with the existing house. First, I'm gonna open this up to the board for questions. Any questions, PJ, anybody about this? No? Is
I
anybody
just-
not?
Yeah, just
Go
to
ahead,
clarify,
Kelly.
Kyle, we're talking about a 2.75% deficiency, is that correct?
2.65 foot,
Foot,
yes, for on
Yeah.
total side
Right.
yard.
gotcha.
Which to clarify, Kelly, is the same exact deficiency he has already. Just for not quite as much house, right?
Correct.
Or porch, actually. Okay, does anybody have any questions before I open this to the public?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna open this to the public. Can you tell me if there's anybody raising their hand or wanting to make a comment, Kyle?
No one at this time.
Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing portion regarding this, and I'm gonna ask everyone, if there are no more questions from the board, to take a look at the seeker. And tell me, let's look at, oh, here we are. Joe, I don't know if you watched the last one, but you did the same thing as Nellie.
Okay.
Answer number 2 is yes, ZBA variance and building permit. Okay?
Yep, yep.
We're not gonna fine you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Did anybody have any other questions regarding this seeker? If not, I'm looking for a motion regarding seeker.
I'll make a motion for appeal 2251. I make a motion that after review of the short environmental assessment form, after reviewing part 1, that the chair can complete part 2, checking boxes 1 through 11,
11.
and signing that this project creates little to no environmental impact.
Seconded by,
Second,
PJ, did you say seconded that, PJ? No, you turned off your, that was your camera. There you go.
There you go.
Did you second that? Thank you, PJ. Okay, all in favor with a raising of hands for this?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's the seeker. If there are no other questions from the board, I'm looking for a motion regarding appeal number 2251 for a 2.75 foot deficiency in the aggregate side yard matching the existing deeded deficiency.
I'll make a motion
PJ?
in regard,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion in regards to appeal 2251 for Joseph Whalen, 25 Prospect Ave, to cover existing concrete patio and steps extending along the length of the house, not encroaching on the front yard setback, but going into the aggregate 2.75 foot variance for side yard setback.
Seconded by
I'll second it.
Kelly. A yes vote texted to Lisa is to approve.
PJ, yes.
Yes.
Scott, yes.
Yes.
Kelly, yes.
Yes.
Kathleen, yes.
Yes.
And Ron, yes.
Yes. Joe, you're all set.
Thank you.
Enjoy your deck.
Thank you.
Yeah, go get a building permit. Okay. Next, we have Maria, I believe it's Herto, special use permit to install an 8-foot high fence in the side yard. Hi, Maria, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Okay. You have sort of an easy one, believe it or not, because it's
Well, that's good.
no, it's a special use permit, and I don't know if you know much about them, but although some of the special use permits we see tonight are not as easy as this one, but in general, these types of special use permits are sort of treated as a matter of right unless they don't meet the 5 criteria for the community. And you are applying for a special use permit to put an 8-foot fence in your side yard, and you have a drawing and a quote. And Kyle, it is only in the side yard, correct? Not in the front yard, in any place. I'm
I
having a
believe it's
little
just-
trouble with it.
Yeah, I believe it's just the side of the house and next to the deck. That's correct.
Okay. And okay, does anybody on the board have a question regarding this 8-foot fence in the side yard?
Is the length of the fence only the part that is yellow on the, okay. Why not all the way around?
Well, one for money and two, it was just for privacy reasons for that particular spot.
Can you tell me how you say your last name, by the way? Is it Herto?
Yeah, it's Herto.
Okay, thank you.
You did good. Most people don't get it right away.
Well, I have one of those too, but okay, so are there any other questions from the board? I'm going to open this up to the public. Kyle, can you let me know if there's anybody raising their hands about the special use permit?
No, sir.
Okay, so we're going to close the public hearing portion of this application. And I'm looking to the board. This is a different seeker because it's a special use permit. It's a long form seeker. Fences don't traditionally have much of an environmental impact. We have no correspondence from anybody anyway on it, or neighbors or anything. And does anybody have, yes, under governmental approvals, you have no on all of them, Maria. You see, you didn't answer right either. Nobody likes to answer. No, it's okay. Again, the fine is very small. It's not from the city council or planning board, but it is from the ZBA, which is who you apply to. You need a SUP and other local agencies. And yes, it is the building inspector, and you need a permit. Okay, that is C and D. Other than that, I'm going to tell you that I find that these seekers in no way generally apply to fences. But does anybody have any questions about the seeker on the board? If not, I'm looking for a motion that might say that the motion might say that we find no adverse environmental impact, as an example. So does anybody on the board have a question? No? Okay. And I'm looking for a motion on the seeker.
I'll make the motion on Appeal 2252 for special use permit for the 8-foot fence in the side yard, that after review of the environmental assessment form that we determine that the proposed action will have no adverse environmental impact.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Megan,
No, go ahead, Megan. You're good.
Megan seconded. And I like to spread those seconds around if I can. Everybody likes seconds. So, all in favor? This one we'll do with a raising of hands. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's the seeker. By the way, did you have a question?
Yeah, my husband does.
Yeah, what was it?
Obviously winter's coming and it's not the best time to put a fence in. Does the 6 months start from if we get approved tonight? Or will it start after
Yes.
we get the building permit?
Yeah, but what you can do is, again, we talked about this with the Violas home.
Yeah.
I would get a hold of Joe McMahon or Kyle in the building inspector's office and see when you want to get that permit. And we can, if you're going to start the Spence and the Sprig, or whatever, work with them. It's doubtful that you're going to have to come back and get another special use permit for the
Yeah,
fence.
they
we
were
can
just
put up.
concerned. I'm sorry to interrupt you. They were just concerned, Freedom Fencing, because of the whole COVID thing. They said they were a little short on materials and depending on when the ground thawed. So we just wanted to make sure that we were within that time frame.
Fully understand that. Some of us are in construction. You can't get anything ever now, nothing. So that can be taken into consideration. Talk to them. And what I would want to avoid is you having to pay, this isn't some big project, another fee to come back and extend it. We can't do it for longer, but talk to them and figure out when you can time your thing, and even, put up a string line and say, this is where we're putting the fence, and call that a substantial start. No, I'm trying to be helpful, truly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's it. Now I'm looking for a motion unless somebody has questions regarding the SUP special use permit for the fence for Maria and her husband. What's your name? What's your husband's name?
Rick.
Oh,
Richard.
yeah, it's on your shirt. Yeah, okay, Rick. So for Maria and Rick. There we go. Who wants to make a motion? Meg? No?
Megan?
Anybody?
Go ahead, Kelly.
I think it's Megan's turn. This is an easy one.
Meg? Okay, Meg.
I'd like to make a motion to approve appeal number 2252 for Maria Hurto at 6 South Acres Road for her special use permit to install an 8-foot fence, an 8-foot high fence in her side yard.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Kelly seconded.
Yep.
We're going to
Good job,
text
Megan.
to Lisa. Right. Megan did it and Kelly seconded. Good job, Meg. And a yes vote to Lisa is to approve this.
Kelly, yes.
Yes.
Scott, yes.
Yes.
Megan, yes.
Yes.
Ron, yes.
Yes.
Kathleen, yes.
Yes.
You're all set. Go get a building permit when you want to. Have fun, enjoy your fence, and get some privacy. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
participating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. And finally, before we get to anything else, we have Catherine Grabda and Crystal Lewis for 22 Guy Way. Hi, guys.
Hi,
What's going on? How are you?
we're good. How are you?
Good. Okay, so You are here for a Class B variance to use a portion of a building as a private fitness center, studio rather, because it creates two principal businesses, or primary buildings rather, not on a lot. And I wouldn't say you're really a business, is that correct? You're not really a business.
Not right now, no.
It's a private club, correct?
It's a
Right,
private
it's
studio,
private studio.
yes.
Right. And is this a place for you to work out, pretty much? You and some friends, right? Is it CrossFit by any chance or no? No. Okay. That's okay. That's probably good. So, do you know how many people are going to use this all together, do you think?
So we are allowed to have 10 people at a time in there.
How many? Say it again.
10 people.
Okay. But it's a private club, like with membership?
Right, yes.
Right. I mean, you have to pay the cost to heat the place and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
And that's okay. So, how do you get, just so we make sure we understand how it works as a private club, how do you get members? Are they your friends? Are they friends of friends, that kind of thing?
There are friends and some friends of friends, yes.
Yeah, that's okay. But that's similar. That's a private. You're not going to be putting ads in like Eclipse or something right? In other words, you're not advertising for members.
No.
It's probably going to be harder to get in than you're going to have more people that want to do. It's tough now though. Like
It's very
because
tough,
of COVID. Yeah. So, all right. I'm going to ask if anybody on the board. Oh no! First, actually, Kyle, can you explain this so we understand it? Do you have a little sheet for it or what?
I do have a sheet, but it's not going to show much. It's just pretty much parking.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, the parking that we figured, I can show it actually. I'll share it in a sec.
Yeah.
We figured that there are plus or minus 30 parking spaces on site. I'm not sure. Plus or minus 30 spaces. And what they're required 18 because there are two principal uses in the lot. Actually, you know what? Hold on a second. I'm going to share something different. All right. So as you can see, this is the building that's in question that they're using, but there is this portion of a building on that lot as well. So that makes it the second principal use. With 6 units in these two buildings, they're required to have 12 parking spaces. And we calculated approximately 6 parking spaces for the space that they're going to be occupying in the building.
Okay.
So they're required to have 18 total, and we calculated roughly 30 parking spaces. They're on, so it's hard to do exactly, but it's
right.
about
So
30.
there are no other deficiencies other than that it's going to create a second primary use on that property. But wasn't this was the machine shop before?
Yes.
The machinist. So it was previously used as a second. There was previously a second principal use there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Does the board have any questions about this? No? Okay. Kyle, can you tell me if there's anybody in the public? I'm going to open the public hearing now. Is there anybody raising their hand that wants to make a comment in any way?
No, sir.
Okay, so I guess nobody really cares from the public, so we'll close the public hearing portion, okay? I'm looking for a motion regarding the seeker for this, but let's check number 2.
Been thinking about that.
Oh, partway there, you did good. You did better than all the other ones. No, actually, I'm gonna put a comma in between. But you have zoning, you have zoning and permits, so you win the lottery. And, no, but actually you do. You did answer it properly. You said yes to number 2. And you said, and listen, you said zoning and permits. So I'm going to interpret that to mean that you had to come to zoning and get a permit. I know that's what you meant. I can tell. So other than that, does anybody have any questions regarding the seeker? And if not, I'm looking for a motion regarding the seeker. We'll get one, don't worry.
I'll make a motion in regards to the short environmental assessment form for the Class B variance appeal number 2253, that after the review of part 1, that questions 1 through 11 in part 2 be checked, no or small impact may occur. And as a result of that, the chair checked the box and signed in part 3 that it will not result in a significant adverse environmental impact.
And who wants to second that?
I'll second.
Kathleen. Okay. So all in favor of Scott's motion to, and Kathleen second, for me to sign this form, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. And we're all set on that. If nobody has any other questions, I'm looking for a motion to allow a second primary use on the lot.
I'll make a motion for appeal 2253 for that we approve a second principal use on one lot for 22 Guy Way as proposed by the applicant.
Okay, and who wants to second that?
I'll second that.
Kelly does. Okay, so now a yes vote to Lisa will be to approve.
Kelly, yes.
Yes.
Scott, yes.
Yes.
Ron, yes.
Yes.
Megan, yes.
Yes.
Kathleen, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you are approved with the second principal use, and go ahead and have your private workout club, and I'm hoping that you're successful in staying fit. So enjoy it.
So much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Bye-bye. Okay. Now, I guess is that it? Are we all set? No, I know we're not. All right. I'm just going to ask the board, if anybody wants to take a break for a second, feel free. Yeah, I'm going to let everybody just take a break for just a couple of minutes, and we'll start the city's application on behalf of Prime. So it's 8 o'clock. We'll say 8:05. Okay. But the other people can come on, but we're going to just take a break. You can start getting people set up and all that, but we're just going to take a break for a few minutes. So that was exhausting to do those, just exhausting. No, but let's start bringing the applicant on. And I'm gonna pause for a second myself. I'll be right back. Okay. Hi, Charles. Can you hear me? Hello, Charlie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Okay, good evening. Now that wasn't, I just want to point out, Charlie, that wasn't so bad. We did all those applications in an hour. We're only starting at 8. It's not too bad.
No.
We tried to get through them. So, and I think they went pretty well. and so here we are. Hi, welcome to everyone that's here. Hi, Dean. So I want to talk about, we have some stuff to go through. I'm not going to go into a long history lesson about how we got to here, about boards and councils and planning boards and all that, just a slight one maybe. But only as it pertains to tonight, probably. We've been doing this for quite a while. I want to express that I think we as a board and the city as an applicant promoting Prime's plan, because the city's the applicant, have been at this for a long time, and it's wearing on us, all of us. So I think we want to, there's an interest here in being true to the process and exacting, but I think that we've been doing a lot of stuff. We've made a lot of progress. I think we have some issues and so on that we need to do. One of the main purposes tonight, at least in my mind, and the board is going to comment or not on this, is to finalize what we're looking at. And the reason I say that might be in question is because the last time we met, this is not, by the way, pointing fingers in the slightest, describing events only. We'd been changing applications for, back and forth for months as Prime and the city reacted to questions and comments from the planning board and the zoning board, and things happened like changing setbacks and all that. And we thought we had an application, and we referred it to the county planning board. And then Dean said right at the meeting, I think we'll go back to the old plan. I thought it was going to be a logistically different way it was done, but that's not a matter. I'm not mad certainly at all about that. And frankly, it wasn't our intention, I don't think, to try to get the planning board to make it a county-wide issue in any way. And I didn't want to see that. I think it's going to be hard enough to get a decision, much less from the supermajority. So but in the midst of that, on Friday, on the 21st, we asked Joe to refer it, and then on the 25th, the plan changed to the plan we have now, which I guess, other than our discussion tonight about how that may or may not change, is the final plan. And that's what we want to understand and determine. Is this the final plan that you want us to, A, shape our findings around, and B, our resolutions? And I believe that we're going to be doing an affirmative, as we discussed earlier at the 6:30 meeting, an affirmative motion. And then at that point, we can decide if that affirmative motion passes or fails. And my goal, and I've expressed this to other members of the board, is to have this done next month. Okay? I really think that we have some fact finding to unite, some suggestions and talks, and just to make sure we understand it, we can talk some about our questions. We're going to have a public hearing. I'm opening a public hearing. And that's because I was asked if I wanted to have one, that I needed to advertise it, so I did. And although there's been some discussion that I could advertise it and have it as a placeholder, I feel that we might as well have one more. I'm going to be pretty explicit on how we do that. I think there's a lot of historical stuff we don't need to hear again. And I'm really looking for comments on this plan. I'm not looking for comments about any other boards or entities other than how it affects the zoning board when we do that. So that's where we're at. We have a plan. We have findings to work on. It's my understanding, and some information correspondence back and forth today, that what would seem agreeable is that we do the following. One, that we define the commercial space, and I'm going to say define this plan and say this is the plan, and this is how the space is going to be used, how may or may not be restaurant. This is the parking as it relates to that. Number two, to understand the south lot parking and the public parking. Number three, to get public comment. And number four, to start the zoning board getting documents ready, both the findings and the resolutions for the special use permits, so that they're ready to be distributed as soon as we can for review by everyone, which is going to be a while, by the way, and then have them ready to vote on. So that's really where we're at. And I think that makes sense. And I think that we all have some work to do, and I have some questions, and I think we as boards have questions about this plan and understanding this plan that we want to do. And I want all of us, including the city, Prime, and the zoning board, to try and limit this to what pertains to these questions tonight. Like, I could talk about the new zoning law. That's not part of the question tonight. So I'm not going to go about how the new zoning law affects it or whether you're going to pull it and put a new application. I'm not going into all that. That's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss the fact that the city has presented a plan by Prime that contains what they plan on doing by number of units and square footage, and we want to know if that's the right one. And we want to know what Prime to know if we have questions about that and about the parking. And we want to get some public comments, and we want to start to shape our findings. And that's really what we want to do. And I don't expect some 4-hour meeting about this, frankly. I mean, I'm not saying not to take our time, but does that make sense to the applicant? I guess that's my question.
Yes, it does.
Great.
Yes, it does.
So, great. So let's talk about, and I'm going to have the board can interject anytime. All they got to do is say, run, and I'll let them speak. So there's no, even though I sometimes have been known to dominate this conversation. But basically now, this is the plan that was presented to the county on September 25th and has not changed since that plan. Is that correct? Let me ask that.
That is correct, and it has also since then been presented to the planning board.
What's that? I'm sorry, say it once more.
It has also been presented to the planning board.
Right, right. So this is the plan that we're going to look at. And this plan, I'm going to summarize it just so I understand, calls for 109 apartments, 13,400 square feet of space, of commercial space, of which X amount is 7,250 is gross commercial, and 6,158 or whatever it is restaurant space, etc. They're broken out. And you have a parking calculation. One thing I did want to mention on these plans that it sort of bugged me a little bit, I guess is the best word, it's not a horrible thing, is that when you do your parking demand per city code and you list all that out, that's great. And then, but then you do parking demand per PUD. And I know it's semantics, but I don't really think that's parking. That sort of seems to imply that that's what the PUD rules call for. And I would, just like city code, I would dare say parking plan for alternate calculation. And I know it's quibbling, but it's an important philosophical point to me. That's all. But anyway, this is really the nut and bolt of the issue here now, and that is you've done a lot as far as mitigation with the setbacks. I mean, nobody can question that. You met the code, right? You met the code for the setbacks, except some existing stuff, but I'm talking about your new project, your new building. So you're allowed to build a 5-story building. You're allowed to put it 15 feet from the property line because it's a high rise. So And you've changed the materials to be sympathetic to downtown. So that, some of that affects what our previous findings talked about. The only, where this still seems to be an issue, and it's even been mentioned between some of us, is how the parking is working and the calculations for the parking and so on. So I want to talk about that a little bit, and about the control of the parking on the south lot. And I'm going to just bring this up once more. And I know this has been brought up to you by others besides me, but I'm going to do it once more. And that is that there's been some discussion about you keeping where the building is and that parking associated with the building, which I'm going to call, for lack of a better amount, 200 spaces. And not getting, and I just want to talk about this once more to make sure it's not part of this plan or could not be. It's been suggested several times to you, and it seems like a viable and approvable plan, I'll say it that way, that the city would keep the south lot and the farmer's market building, which would mean that 3,400 square feet of your commercial space would not be included in this calculation anymore. And I understand there's some questions about infrastructure and money, and that's another whole issue. But the question is that possible to do? Is it possible for you to be self-sufficient in the footprint, and I'll call it north surface lot of your project? Can you, and I've told you once before, and I'm just bringing it up because we need to get to the end. If that's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it's not going to happen, but let me just finish. It's not going to happen. You could, as an example, be self-sufficient and meet the ordinance if you had 10,000 feet of non-restaurant space and 90 apartments, self-sufficient on that lot without the other lots. And your proposal, the last I knew, your concept was to figure out a way to make sure that the city understood that that you could cede control of that lot. I'm not sure how you do that if you still need some of those spaces for your use. So there's my first question. Then we'll get to the board. We go from there. And that's sort of a kickoff about how we're going to determine final plan.
So, good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone again. There was a lot there that was asked. So I think as far as an agenda goes for tonight, we're completely on the same page. But I would kind of like to show a graphic and a chart that I have prepared. If I could just share my screen for a second, and we'll kind of take those questions in order and finalize the plan and talk about the parking and so forth. So is that all right, everyone, if I share my screen for a second?
Sure.
Okay. So can everyone see this chart that is on my screen? Let's see. So this is a chart that we submitted to the county, and really, you know, to what Ron was saying is, you know, we've been back and forth now for a number of months, working close to over a year since I think we first submitted. And so it is confusing as to what the changes in the plans have made, because, you know, we'll make a change based on ZBA comments. We'll go to the planning board. We'll make a change based on planning board comments. We come back to the ZBA. So this chart was used to try to put things in perspective. And then I'll hand it over to Turner to talk about the more defined commercial spaces. Our initial submission to the county was kind of our original plan. And that's the first row you see there. That initial plan was 115 apartments, 13,400 square feet of mixed use commercial. Parking demand per the code, plus the additional 50 public parking spaces, was 367. You know, Ron, pardon my language, but parking demand per the PUD, we had calculated at 276 was kind of the relief we were asking. We were providing 286 parking spaces. Back in August of this year, we changed the plan. based on comments received. That was a reduction in residential apartments to 104, an increase of commercial space to 17,900. Parking demand per code plus the 50 spaces is 419. Our demand for purposes of the PUD remained the same, but we provided 290 spaces. Now, most recently, the plan that we will discuss tonight, that for all intents and purposes, and Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, is the final plan, as the planning board has seen it and agreed to it in sum and substance, is a slight increase in residential apartments from our prior, so 109, still 6 apartments below the original proposal. We've reduced the commercial space by 4,500 square feet, which has lessened the parking demand per code to be 357, which again includes that 50 public parking spaces. Parking demand per PUD was reduced to 267, and we are increasing the amount of parking provided to 293. So I will say this chart is a testament to the process. I think the process is working. There can be no claim that this application was not thoroughly vetted. I would find that to be not true by all stretches of the imagination. I do understand that there are some concerns, Ron, going back to your question about seeding that property. And I think what the question comes down to is this board appears to be concerned about how are the 50 public spaces going to be enforced as they are mixed in with the commercial spaces that Prime is going to need. So as you guys discussed tonight, keep in the back of your minds that we are certainly open to the idea of enforcement measures, whether it's striping on those parking spaces. Certainly we are going to identify those that are for the commercial space, those that are open to the public. As if you put in some sort of enforcement mechanism in the special use permit resolution, then you can ensure that the city has enforcement power over the parking scheme. Because if we don't follow line by line the conditions in our resolution or the site plan, and if we don't follow things and we don't follow through on our commitment to the city, the building inspector can come in and say we're in violation of our site plan and in violation of our special use permits. So start thinking maybe that as an avenue of ensuring proper enforcement, that these 50 spaces, remain open how you see it, they would remain open. And, we are open to hearing other conditions as well. It's all part of like the process this late in the game, I suppose.
Okay.
That was all I had. I'll hand it over to Turner to talk about the change in the commercial space. And then.
Yeah, okay, hold on one, Dean, because I have a question.
Sure.
And I want to clarify something just a little bit because and again, I'll use the phrase alternate calculation because I like that better than PUD. But what I'm going to tell you is that at this point, I'm going to take the 50 spaces out for a second, okay? I know that they're in there. But I'm going to tell you that now you're saying that you need, by code, 357, I think it is, right? Is that correct?
Well, if you're taking the 50 spaces out,
no,
300.
307. It used to be 317, about 10 spaces less than the original March one.
Correct.
Right, it was 367, 317. So what I'm going to tell you though is that let's just use the let's forget the public spaces for a second. You need, for what you want to do, 317 spaces, and you're providing 200 and, is that 67? Right?
You're providing 293 spaces.
290. Okay.
So
except that includes the 50, doesn't it?
So it'd be 200 and I'm sure someone out there will be checking my math.
I'm having a little trouble reading.
Subtract 50.
243.
So what I'm going to tell you though is that one of the concerns is that you can say all you want, and we'll get to how the commercial space is done. Your calculation is still the same. 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, 1 per 300 square feet for all of the commercial and restaurant space. That's really that's what it's based on. I think there's a few employee spaces in there. The difference is that the city code requires that counts all the visitors and employers and everybody under their 2 for the first 10 and 1 3/4. They don't separate the commercial stuff. They don't separate an employee requirement. But anyway, the question is how can the public be assured, and we're talking about control here, that your uses aren't going to bleed over onto that parking lot to the point where they overtake them. And one of the easiest ways seems to be for you to look at your plan and say, and I'm not saying you can do this or can't, and say, look, we know we meet the code this way. We know that, here's an example, like I said, and I'm not, you're going to say yes or no. That's not the point, but I'm just talking about a way, because we're all concerned about this parking, and this seems to be the biggest issue right now, is how this affects parking downtown, how it affects the property owners around it, how people have access to it. We got a letter from Mike Zerlo saying that the county parking lots could be used for emergency snow today and all this other stuff. That's all well and good, but the question, and we've made some strides, you're right. The question is, how do we ensure that if you're successful in all of your apartments and whatever goes in as a restaurant, how do we ensure that area, and at one point there was even a suggestion from the city that Prime might be able to figure out a way to cede control of the entire 90 spaces over there. And I'm not sure how you would have done that or not, but that's sort of the question. But my question is that concept at all realistic, that you will consider being self-sufficient on that other portion of the lot and having no ownership, actually? Now, I'm not talking about the money or the infrastructure or any of that right now. We're only talking about whether that works. So I guess Turner can answer how you've calculated that, and then we can talk about how it's affected, right?
I can answer the question, Ron, as far as what we can and can't do. Now, this process started with the city soliciting us and other folks to make a proposal based on a plan that had, I believe, 45,000 square foot of office and 40 apartments and required 467 parking spaces. Our initial plan that we brought actually was 129 units. We typically don't do projects this small just because of the cost of the overhead to run a small project. We've made a bunch of concessions along the way to get to where we are now. The one concession that we are very comfortable that we have enough parking for our use on our site. And one of the concessions that we did discuss was that the 92 stalls, I believe it is now next door, we could make those all available to the general public. How you would want to monitor that, we're going to do what we say. That's what we do. But if there's concerns, then certainly whatever mechanism that you all would want to make as part of the resolution to assure that we're not doing rentals for those spaces for our tenants, we'd be happy to entertain that, because that's
okay. Just so I understand, does that mean that all of the parking for the residential units and the commercial and restaurant space would fit on that other part in that building, course, 3,400 feet of it of
But Rob, we don't
commercial
even have a
space
tenant
is the
yet. I mean,
farmer's market, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be
Well, I just-
impossible. Yeah, it's gonna be impossible to monitor if somebody's gonna, let's say we have a restaurant
Oh,
or
yeah, I understand.
if somebody's gonna buy shoes at the shoe store, that they're not gonna park in the lot and out for an hourly basis. The commitment we can make is that we would not enter into, let's say the county wanted 10 spaces on a monthly basis or something like that. You know, we could certainly make a representation that there's no way we could rent long-term to any of our tenants, that our tenants won't be parking in that lot. Can we police what patrons of the tenants do? No, it's impossible to do. It's impossible.
Okay. You know, I'm understanding this, Dean, and I think it makes, I don't know how the board feels, so I'm not sure how we want to go next, because I've just talked for a bit and asked some questions. Do you want to have maybe Turner explain how he calculated a little bit about the commercial space so we can understand that? Because I think that that's probably more of a concern and its impact than the number of residential units in some ways. So, or does the board want to start asking some questions first?
I mean, I can go through the commercial space. It's not going to take, it won't take too long. It's not super complicated.
Go ahead, Turner.
Okay. I mean, the reduction from the 17,000 to the 13,000 square feet is taking it back basically to where it started, so that 3,400 square feet of that is in the former farmers market building, and 10,000 square feet of the commercial space is in the main building. It's all on the first floor, and largely along Durkee Street, but now does wrap a little bit towards Bridge, but primarily along Durkee Street. So of that 13,400 square feet, we just split it 60-40. We took 6,150 square feet of it, which was, I believe, the original number we had reserved for restaurant square use. So of the 13,400, we said 6,150 square feet, pegged for restaurant use, and split that 60-40, 60% front of house, 40% back of house, which is a common industry split for restaurant use. And the rest of it would remain, commercial retail space. That's it.
Okay. Can you tell me, though, the spaces you're requiring, certainly if you're going to have, if the farmer's market is part of your property and your development, and you don't know if some of that's going to be restaurant or some of that's going to be retail, or are you expecting all of the restaurant to be in the main building?
I mean, nothing is identified for uses anywhere. There are no tenants, there are no spaces, so it could go anywhere. We've set it up so that either could accept a restaurant. They both have grease traps, and if it were to be that way, it could be either.
But obviously, the parking for if there's a retail or commercial use of any kind in the farmer's market building, that parking wouldn't be over in the main building. It'd be part of those 90. I'm just trying to make sure we're clear on everything. Some of those would come out of that 92 space thing, because they're going to pull up to the farmer's market building. They're not going to go over in the other building and then walk over, right? So I just want to understand what would be shared or not shared or whatever. But I understand the concept, and Dean, I understand what you're saying about the 92 spaces. Part of that was why I thought that your parking requirements would go down if you're going to not have control of that anyway. That's part of why I thought that some of those 92 spaces could be used for the farmer's market building if it wasn't under your control. That was, and you were self-sufficient on the other. But I want the board to ask some questions now. about this, about partner, anything or comments? If not, I'll move on, but.
Turner, just to clarify, you show how much square footage for restaurant?
So the total restaurant square footage at this point is 6,150 square feet. And that is divided into 60% customer space, 40% back of house space.
And that is, it can physically be split between the farmer's market and the main building.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't identified anything, but both buildings are set up with grease traps, and we discussed that with the DPW so that either one could accept restaurant space.
Okay. My other question in this change, this most recent change, it appears you've pulled residential up towards Durkee Street along the walkway. Am I correct there?
Along the south face of the building.
Yes.
Okay. Steve, if Steve is on, I will have him jump in here because this was his magic internal to the building. Steve, are you on?
And I'm mainly asking in regards to first floor apartments. That was an issue, and it was kind of mitigated because we were already going downhill.
Yeah. So for all intents and purposes, the building will remain the way it had been. There will be parking under that wing of the building on the south face. I believe what Steve did was he added a floor, which is how he made up the additional units.
Hey Turner, I'm on if you want me to jump in, but so
yeah,
far you're doing fine.
Please. Before. Oh no.
I enjoy hearing an engineer explain architecture.
Yeah, right. Go for it.
Okay.
Somebody pull up a plan. Can you actually?
Yeah, that would be good, actually. Thanks.
Yeah, guys, I've got it pulled up. I'll share my screen.
But essentially, Scott, what we did when the commercial went back to 10,000 in simple terms, the entry was restored at the corner of Ridge and Durkee. So that is a front door for the housing component. And then we have a lobby administrative area along that side of the site.
Yep.
And the covered walkway remains, Scott, along Bridge Street.
Yep.
There are now private balconies for units that we put back when commercial space was reduced on level 1.
Okay.
The other thing, it's a little hard to maybe explain, but because the entry from Durkee is down about 6 feet, 7 feet in elevation from the corner of Bridge and Durkee, that's down, in other words, 7 feet from the level 1 elevation, the commercial space, in other words. And because we have a tall 14-foot floor to floor above the commercial to accommodate whatever use, whether it's a restaurant or a brewery, we don't know for sure who that's going to be, but they do need the extra height for flexibility, for mechanical systems, lighting, et cetera. So because we have that extra 14 feet, we have the ability to keep housing elevated above that parking on the south side, higher than what it was originally. But because we have the 7 feet plus 14, we have 21 feet, in other words, to work with, which is basically enough for 2 floors to slip into that volume. So that's why it's a little confusing. But the housing on that left hand or south wing, in other words, has a floor elevation 3 feet higher than the commercial space because the parking is down 7 feet and it descends as you circulate under the building to the basement parking. So in essence, that's what happened when the commercial got reduced. We added units back on the north wing along Bridge Street. And now because we have the entry on the corner, there's no longer a need for the covered walkway as a housing entry on level 1. We still have the entry off of the Riverwalk on the east side, So that in essence, you have two entries to housing. The Riverwalk entry is down one level or at the basement level, which also happens to be the entry from the parking portion of the site. So that's a nice accommodation for the residents. So that ends up being a two-story lobby, common space at the east end of the building where that entry occurs. But because of that, we can make those private balconies for those units that face north. And the elevation of those balconies is well above the sidewalk. I think as we illustrated before, some of the elevations in the rendering. So for all practical purposes, it's really a floor higher than somebody walking by on the sidewalk on that side of Bridge Street. So that makes sense, Scott?
It does, and I guess I would kind of like to see the renderings again, and maybe you provided them months ago, but with all that's come and gone, I just soon hear from you guys or get.
If Matt can pull those up.
Give me a second.
Okay.
Because we had significant discussion and back and forth about the south surface, Bridge Street also, but once you put the administrative down, one office down on Bridge Street, that alleviated a lot of the concerns there.
Right, good. The view probably from the bridge itself on Bridge Street probably tells it best. You can see the sloping sidewalk if Matt can find it.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
But the floor elevations have changed now?
No, well, Ron, the only thing that changed is because of where the parking entry off of Durkee. We have the ability, like I said, to have that access work to parking. And again, the entry point is 7 feet lower than the commercial floor elevation. And that connects in down into the parking under the building, under the yard in the center of the U. Remember,
did the building height?
Pardon?
Did the building height change?
No. No.
Because it says that you're allowed 60 feet. Was this a variance before? I just don't remember this.
Yeah, I think there was a variance for height. I think 65 was the original request, I think.
That is true, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
Right, and you're still showing 65.
Yeah, we're still asking for the same. We are, a bit lower, Ron, but we didn't feel it was material enough to change that request.
I thought we lowered this at one point.
We did.
So Ron, the overall, the highest point of the building was lowered, and in fact, quite a bit. What we did was we changed the highest roof from a peaked roof to a flat roof. But the way you calculate the height of a peaked roof is you take, the median height of the peak. So the actual height of the building did not change, even though the highest point of the building came down.
And Ron, excuse me, because we're measuring still to the top of the mezzanine level, even though that setback, I think effectively 17 feet from the facade on the street side. So the impact obviously is quite different as far as volume, but in absolute terms, when you measure to the mezzanine height, it's not that much lower by definition.
The reason I'm asking is because one of our things in our findings has to do with variations and whether they need to be mitigated. And I don't remember talking about this height variation. There's not variances, right? Because we aren't doing variances. Variations, and whether there's variations or deviations in a site plan that is approvable by the planning board would have received a variance. Okay, as an example, when we talked about the setbacks and we said we didn't think that would meet a variance, you change the setbacks to 15 feet and they now meet that requirement. So, and I have to tell you, and I'm pretty good at following stuff, I got lost when you started talking about the heights of the commercial space versus this and that. And this plan, and I understand that you have to get stuff done to the point where you keep drawing and drawing and drawing. but this plan has no elevations with it. The one that we got in our packet. And the one that was presented to the planning board does not have elevations with it. Is that correct?
I don't know what was submitted, but we did provide updated elevations, Ron, that correspond to these plans. So those should be available.
We have not seen them.
Yeah, we have not seen them. So I guess and you know, we're talking about first floor apartment. You know, despite
The outside of the building didn't change since the last rendition of the visualizations were done.
Right.
Right. The height hasn't changed. It's a subtle difference in that you do have openings into that parking level on the south side.
Right.
But the net effect is very minimal on the south elevation. No change in height.
Right. Right. So what we're trying to do, right, is define this plan and say this is the plan you want voted on. That's what we're doing tonight, right? That's part of this whole thing. Understanding this plan. This is different slightly from the March plan because instead of 115, we have 109 units of mitigation, correct? Etc. I think it's the same commercial spaces as before. And you gained a couple spaces using compact and subcompact cars, which I think is in the code and perfectly viable. And that, you know, so I'm not questioning that. I just want to make sure we understand what we're going to be voting on and get opportunities to see how we can modify it, if in any way, to mitigate this parking, you know, the concern over the difference in the parking proposed as an alternate calculation and the parking required. But the first thing is to understand now if that residential use has changed along the walkway, how has it changed? And are those residential uses, is that first floor still high enough where those are that they're 8 feet up like we have them on Bridge Street? That's
Ron and I did find the most recent building elevations, and I can share my screen if you guys want to take a look at that now.
That'd be great. Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
When you're ready. So this is the Durkee Street elevation, and this has not changed, Ron, other than we have an entry into the parking on the far right side, but otherwise, as far as height or basic fenestration, it hasn't changed, nor have the placement of apartments, et cetera, or the placement of commercial.
Okay.
Can you pull up the north elevation, Matt? This is the east.
Got the east and the south.
Okay, south is good. So south, go back to south. So you can see at the bottom there where we have the openings into the parking structure, but again, the height's the same as far as the building's concerned. The entry into the parking's on the far left. And then if you go to the north, show the covered walkway.
Steve, the only two I have in this file are east and south. Turner, do you have the others available?
Isn't that now a 6-story building?
No.
Well, it looks like 6 to me. Am I missing something? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, I guess if I look at the left side of that, that's flat on Durkee Street, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, give or take. That part, I guess when I go over to and I understand about the hill, but even what's happened is that you put a parking garage there and then 5 floors above the parking garage. Is that correct?
Depends on how you define a level, Ron.
What's that?
It depends on how you define a level, but the height, and again, the allocation of levels is the same as what we had before.
I believe the mezzanine does not count officially as a story, correct, Steve?
That's correct.
I have the other elevations if you want me to share my screen.
Okay.
As we go through this, I'd just like, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, it seems like we're taking one step forward and two step backwards. Well, there I am. As far as going back to building height, if you remember over the summer, this board was quite pleased with the drastic improvements to the building height appearance that was achieved by Steve's rework of the building and pulling back the mezzanine level. So I just want to remind the board that this hasn't been an issue that's been discussed and was put to bed at
Okay. Thank you, Charlie, but I want to tell you something. This is different. And I'm going to tell you, okay, if we go, is this, I'd like to know what that screen is. I don't want to, am I sharing my screen somehow? I don't want to be. Okay. Is this this is the March one. And are we looking at, what elevation is this?
So this is the west elevation along Durkee.
This is Durkee.
Yep.
Right.
So see the commercial on the ground floor, Ron? The bottom floor, you see how the sidewalk slopes down? And you see the parking on the far right?
Can I see the south elevation from this?
Yep.
Matt, you want to share your screen, Matt?
Yeah.
Is there residential on the first floor of this elevation?
No.
No.
Residential is on the north side and the south side, Corey. So if you could pull up the south elevation, Matt.
Yep.
I'll explain what happened here so it's a little clearer for Ron.
No.
Ron,
no,
here's
this
the
is
south
the,
elevation.
I want to.
Yeah.
I want the March one. I want the March one.
Okay. I mean, in essence, the difference, Ron, is that we've pulled down and created openings into the parking where before you didn't see it. But the reality is the height of the wall is the same. And we could have a blank wall there into parking and it would appear as a 5-story building as it did before, counting the mezzanine level. So all we've done here is to manipulate the grade a bit so that we could have some openings into the parking. And those have a very high sill from the inside because the parking is descending, not unlike how you see the slope on the grade here. So in essence, we're creating openings into the basement, if you will. We think that makes the basement a little more appealing. We don't have to do that. But we thought this would be something that would be preferable for the city. So the reality is we don't have to do that on that base level for the parking.
Steve, this where the walk is between Durkee Street and the Riverwalk?
No, this is the side that faces the parking lot. Corey,
Yeah, that's
the same side, Steve.
Right. So it's a
now on the building plan or the layout plans.
Mm-hmm.
What is the level 1 plan? A 2.3.
So if you look at the Durkee elevation, the west one that we had up before.
What I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to correlate these renderings, these elevations to the floor plans.
Right. So go back to the west elevation. And again, I'll review what happens on the Durkee Street side.
Are we looking at the elevations or do we want to look at the floor plans?
Elevations, I think, is probably going to be easier because that's what they're trying to grasp.
Okay. Well, if you want to look at the west or the north ones, Turner, you're going to have to share your screen because for whatever reason I don't have those available.
Okay.
Now, I think you understand what I'm trying to figure out, which is to correlate
those
elevations to the floor plans because what is the basement and what is the sub basement and what is the level 1 plan?
Okay,
Well, and the issue, and I think you're getting at it, Corey, and I had this problem, is on your level 1 plan, you're showing commercial and you're showing residential, but you're saying commercial is at sidewalk level and you aren't showing residential.
Right. That's all commercial on Durkee. So let me walk you through it again, because
What about at the corner there?
no, hang on. Let me walk you through it again, because I can appreciate how it's a little hard to grasp what's going on, because you're having to think 3-dimensionally and you're looking at something that's 2-dimensional. So I can appreciate the difficulty. So if you look at the level 1 plan, if you can pull that up. This is the basement, level 1. Okay. So you understand the current site context, right? That the street slope in both directions, everybody's with me on that?
Yes.
It's not a flat site. And the parking lot slopes down away from Durkee Street. The high point is really the corner of Bridge and Durkee, right?
Correct.
The low point of this parking lot site is really the southeast corner, which is the lower left-hand corner on the plan you're looking at now, right? So it's kind of a warped plane if you think of it that way. So what happens is we have our front door on the corner of Bridge and Durkee. That establishes that level 1 elevation as we describe it. So the commercial in the middle, right, and the units on the right-hand side of the plan are all at the same floor elevation, okay? And the sidewalk, as you know, descends along Bridge Street down about 8 feet, almost really a full floor at the northeast corner. So the units that have now private balconies along the sidewalk and Bridge are going to be well above head level for somebody walking along there, assuming it's an average 5'6" high person. And then along Durkee Street, again, we have the covered walkway that at the end has a ramp down, which you can see on the plan there, down to meet the sidewalk level at the southwest corner. So where the parking enters under the building from Durkee Street, and whoever's got the pointer, if they could highlight that. So you see the entry there to parking, you're down 7 feet lower than the floor elevation of what we call level 1, which again is the commercial space. Okay, with me so far?
Yes.
So when you enter the parking is really a spiral down, okay? So you enter the parking off of Durkee, and as you head towards the river, you're going down, and that drops about 3 feet. So at the southeast corner of the site, you're down really a full floor from level 1 in terms of elevation, okay? And then that continues to spiral down as a parking basement. And the elevation of that is more or less the same as what we had originally in terms of a parking elevation. And the housing that you see then on the south side above that parking, in order to get the headroom to work, we had to raise that 3 feet above what used to be the level 1 floor elevation, okay? We don't need as much headroom above parking as we do floor to floor for housing units. So we have a 10-foot floor to floor above the parking and 11-foot floor to floor above the housing. That's how we can make it work within the 7-foot drop from level 1 plus the 14-foot floor to floor height above level 1, which equals 21 feet. So it's 10 foot above the parking on the left-hand wing and another 11 feet to the second floor above level 1. So what happens is when you drive under that, you're spiraling down again to connect all the parking below the building. So what we changed in elevation, Ron, on that south elevation again is we didn't have to do this, but we decided to create some openings into the parking, but they're very high openings, again, as it relates to the floor elevation. And I think that's why you perceive a bit of a difference in number of floors or openings, but it's not the case that it's changed in terms of that relationship.
And to Scott and Corio, sorry to cut you off there, Steve, but sure. I think to answer your guys' question is this first floor plan where you see the residential, there is parking that enters at grade underneath that first floor residential.
Right here.
Right.
So what residential is on the first floor on the south elevation?
It's really an intermediate floor, to answer your question. It's elevated 3 feet above what we call the first floor, elevation wise. So it's that section on the left side of the plan.
So it's only nominally, the first floor because the site is dropping as it goes down Durkee Street. By the time you get to the south edge of the building, you've already dropped, 6 feet. And then we elevated that floor 3 feet above the commercial space finished floor, and we could get parking underneath it. So it's only nominally the first floor.
So all of this here is 3 feet above the commercial space here.
Right.
But if you're talking about from the elevation of the sidewalk at this point, Steve, the floor of the residential is how many feet above the sidewalk?
It'll be 10 feet higher.
10 feet. So you've got 10 feet here between the sidewalk and the floor of these first floor residential units.
Right, and it increases as you drive under it.
Go down towards the river.
East, right, it increases by another 3 feet.
So you're saying that there's no residential on the first floor on the west elevation, but there is residential on the first floor on the south elevation?
It's really a 4-1A, Corey. It's not at the same elevation, so we could probably call it level 1.3, if you will.
What I'm trying to figure, that's one of your special use permits, right? So do you need a special use permit for the residential on the south elevation or not?
Well, technically, we could call that level something other than level 1 because it's not at the same floor elevation. So I'm not sure how to answer your question.
All right. How is the residential on the west elevation different than the residential on the south elevation? If at all.
The residential on the west elevation only begins on level 2. There's none on level 1 on the west side.
Okay, so the green on the corner, on the southwest corner, is that on the first floor or not?
That's 3 feet higher, so it's not on the first floor.
All right, then the orange one next to it, is that on the first floor going east?
No, everything is 3 feet higher on that window.
Yeah, Corey, everything that I'm outlining here, that's 3 feet higher than all of the rest of the first floor. So if it's easier to simply refer to all of it as the first floor, I think it can go either way.
Let me ask you a question. That green that you were just talking about, that's an apartment in that corner?
Yes.
How high is that apartment above the sidewalk on Durkee?
10 feet.
Can you show me that on the elevation? Go back to that elevation.
It's probably,
we're looking right here.
You see it on the left side, right?
No, because
that's actually level 2. It'd be underneath that, Ron. And there's only a piece of it that you see next to that window to the right there.
What is that on the corner that we're seeing? Go over a little bit. That gray, what's that?
Yeah, so that's the side of the unit on level 2 on the west side.
No, down lower. Down, what's that?
Yeah, that's the entry to the parking down below.
Parking goes all the way down
Not
here.
in that corner, not on the south elevation, it's not.
Yeah, I think it is.
What you're seeing is something beyond.
It is?
In elevation, that area is set farther back.
Pull up the Durkee Street elevation that showed the entrance to the garage.
Turner, that's got to be you again.
Shows the entrance to the garage, not on the corner.
Yes, there was one.
Over further.
There was
Right.
one that showed it in the corner.
That's the entrance to the garage.
Right, and the service
Right.
area is the opening to
On A 2.2. On A 2.2, that's the entrance to the garage.
A 2.2 was the level 1 plan, I believe, right?
That's the basement plan.
Okay, yes, so that's the garage, correct?
So where is the commercial level?
So if you start on the left side, Scott,
Yep.
you can see that's the entry at the corner of Ridge and Durkee. That's our first floor elevation. And that's the high point of the site. And then there's a covered walkway that runs along the entire length of the building on level 1, right where the hand is. And then behind those columns is where the ramp comes down to meet the sidewalk.
Yep.
And it connects to the sidewalk before you get to the service entry, which is that first opening towards the end.
So what you're explaining here, essentially, this 2.3 level 1, that whole south wing is nowhere near the same floor elevation as the rest of the building that's on that drawing.
On the west side, that's correct.
It's off by 10 feet, 8 feet?
Well, it's 10 feet above the basement level, which is the access to the parking.
I mean, your drawing here, your depiction here shows that west wing, or I'm sorry, that south wing is just about the same elevation as level 2. Unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, you want to go to the elevation again on the south side?
Back to you, Matt.
Yep.
So on the far left is what's facing Durkee Street. And what you're seeing beyond where you see the balcony on the far left. Yeah, thanks for zooming in. That's actually set back from the south facade of the building. This is one of the things that, as a drawing we do to illustrate everything you see, if you could truly see it as one plane, but obviously it's not a true depiction. That's why we do perspectives. So anyway, what you're seeing on the far left is actually set back 8 feet really to the corner of the balcony. And that's, again, the bottom balcony is level 2 for what faces Durkee Street on the left. And then when you turn the corner, you see where we've tucked some units below those, which are the ones that are elevated 3 feet above level 1. And that allows us to create openings into the basement for the parking. And that's why you see those dark openings at the bottom. Those are the screens, I think, that Turner illustrated at an earlier meeting for how we treat openings into the parking. And the difference is that before that was a blank wall, if you look at some of the earlier elevations that we had. And now that we created the entry off of Durkee and elevated that part of the parking ramp, we thought it made sense to create openings into that basement. We don't have to do that, but we think that makes for a better environment. And it makes for a more attractive facade for the building facing south.
Do you have the south elevation from the March application?
Matt probably does, yep.
Yeah, let me see if,
So, and again, the height hasn't changed in overall terms otherwise.
Right.
So that, I think that's important to understand.
Was it previously that all the floors were the same height? And now you've changed the floors in the commercial? Can you?
No, the floor height hasn't changed on the commercial. Nothing's changed really on the location of the commercial or level 1 as far as floor height, nor has the height changed of the floors above. And again, the difference is because we moved the entry to the parking away from Bridge Street, which I think everybody was happy to see. But it does create a different circumstance for how you access that basement parking. So we're essentially entering 3 feet higher than where we entered before from Bridge Street. But the net effect of all that is that we can connect the entry off of Durkee to the parking under the building like we did before. And again, you circulate in a spiral down to the sub-basement. And I appreciate, again, it's challenging the grass. That's, again, one of the difficulties when you draw things in 2 dimensions, when you're trying to communicate something that's really a 3-dimensional construct. So
This was a result of pulling the building back 15 feet and trying to maintain parking. So that situation has been here ever since we pulled the building back 15 feet. So this is not the first time we've presented this elevation on the side.
And that gave us more room to work with to adjust the grade to on all sides of the building, which I think is a positive, both from a landscaping standpoint and again, just the comfort in terms of how the building fits within the context. And that's one reason we're able to create that opportunity for windows into the basement. Do you have the rendering, Matt, from the corner of Rich and Durkee? I think that will also help explain.
Yeah, I'm looking. Turner, do you have that readily available? I'm searching through about 400 files here.
I'm sorry, what are we trying to find?
The rendering either from the corner of Bridge and Durkee or the one from the bridge on Bridge Street. Either one. Probably the corner of Bridge and Durkee. What I want to emphasize is that the height hasn't changed. The covered walkways haven't changed from what we had prior. It's really what happens in terms of the amount of commercial and the entry.
I wanted to see that south wall because what you're saying is in general, it's been, I'm not sharing my screen. Okay. That's why this end looks like six stories, right? Because or whatever. But the question is, I wanted to see the blank wall on the south side that is now open. That's what I was really trying to see on that south elevation. So I can understand why it stayed the same, except you put more windows in. That's all I'm trying to.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find it. I've got about 3,000 files here, but.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll get to that because you can send it to us or whatever. But what to stay on topic, Charlie, and not take steps backwards. We're trying to verify that how this plan is or is not different from the March plan, which is different because it's 109 spaces and it's different. 109 apartments. The commercial space you're proposing is staying the same. I haven't had much reaction to my suggestion about the city keeping the South Lot and Farmers Market building. We understand that there's some issues and questions about parking and how you calculated it. We understand how you calculated it, whether or not that has an impact, it's a problem. But in general, I'd really like to see one of the things that would be helpful and that we could then get up on the website for anybody to see would be to take these plans, which are up there, and include those all the elevations from each side of the building. And I would like to see, and Matt, you and I talked at one point before about not confusing stuff with March applications and present applications. But I think that it might be helpful to have them both very clearly marked what's March and what's September, so that they can, if there's not a big difference, and it's really mostly opening up walls that were closed, that people can see that, and if the height hasn't changed, etc. So that'd be helpful to see. We're at the 109 apartments. We're at 10,000 feet in this building and 3,400 square feet in the Farmers Market building of commercial space. Nothing, by the way, was calculated for the civic space that's left in the Farmers Market building. There's hardly been, you're taking 3,400 feet of I'm not even sure how big that is, 8,500 or whatever. You're leaving the open part as a civic space, but there's been no discussion about that parking, whether there should or shouldn't be. That's another whole issue. But I'm just mentioning that we're not taking into account that whole building, and theoretically, even though it says civic space, if there's control there, you could eventually say, oh, we've got more desire for commercial space and we're going to close that in or not. That's another sort of control issue that can be discussed. And maybe it's dealt with in some way with the city's contract with Prime. I don't know. But I'm just mentioning some questions and things. I'm not, that's something we noticed. So does anybody on the board have other questions regarding the plan, or do they understand the plan as it's presented right now for what Prime and the city are saying this is the final plan?
I just may add one thing.
Wait, Charlie, hold on. I'm just asking the board first, then I'll go right to you. But maybe none of them are going to say anything, then I'll go right to you. But I just want, does everybody on the board understand this plan with 109 spaces, 10,000 feet in the main building and 3,400 square feet in the farmers market building, and the number of spaces they have? And then we're saying for now, because nobody seemed to have taken my advice about the separation of the two lots, etc., this is the plan. Charlie, is that correct, that this is the plan?
This is the plan. And along those lines, one thing I want to emphasize is there's a lot of what if questions that are being raised. What if civic space becomes X? What if this becomes this? What I'd like to impress upon the board is you're approving a plan with a very set amount of commercial space, residential units, and a parking calculation that is based on a worst case scenario for the mixed uses. That set of plans, that design will be, if approved, the plan. If it is ever changed in the future, to this end, for example, civic space, if that ever wants to be used for additional restaurant space, that just can't happen overnight. Prime would have to come in and seek amendments of its site plan and amendments to these approvals, because that would change our parking calculations. So what this board approves will be, the plan that you'll see, and hopefully we can, ease some of the fears about the what ifs, because you guys are seeing what will be improved.
Yeah, Charlie, thanks, and I think that there's a couple points. One, you're right. We've seen this plan a lot. We've also questioned it a lot, and we've made a lot of progress in there. I'm not saying that, but it's not like going, oh, you've known about this parking calculation forever. I've also, just like I was with the setbacks, disagreed with it forever. So that's one issue. The other question is, and I'll say this since you brought it up, you're probably, first of all, even under the present ordinance, once we approve the special use permits, since we are not approving or disapproving variances, I'm not sure if that would ever come back in front of us under the present system. I guess it would as a modification of a special use, but it'd really be an area thing with parking and whether or not the planning board would approve that variation. But secondly, only because you brought it up, the question would remain, if in fact the new law takes place, you could modify your plan. So let's say we approved it as it is, and a new law took place. You could come back and say, oh, we've got a new application. We're going to change the plan and make it all restaurants and do this or that. And you wouldn't come back in front of anybody. So we don't even know about that. Now, that's out in the future.
I understand that fear, right? We had nothing to do with this new law. However, once the development agreement and the conditions of the development agreement are satisfied, this land will no longer be owned by the city. This will be owned by Prime. Thus, that law will not be applicable. Not to mention the fact that I've reviewed that law, and the last section of that law, I believe, talking about severability, completely says this, basically says that this law doesn't apply to Prime. So there is no intent to have the city own this lot. This will be Prime's property once the closing happens, and then that law doesn't apply.
You're correct about that. That's true. However, in between when we approve this and then that takes place, I don't even know what's going to happen with that law or not. And I said I'm not into really talking about it at length or what ifs about it. What I will tell you is that I'm not so sure that I would trust in the fact that that law is written as absolute about future applications for any present applications that change. That said, we're really here for specific purposes tonight, not the law. So, and I made my feelings clear about the law in a public hearing, so I don't need to do that again. So right now, this is the plan. There's no offer to come back with, just a second, no offer to come back with the city keeping the south lot and the farmer's market building and you being self-sufficient on that lot. This is the plan. And this is what we're going to write our findings around. That's what I want to make sure. Go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, so I just want to say that no matter who owns the lot next door or who owns the farmer's market, if your concern's parking, it's not going to change the parking need or demand. We're willing, what I did say tonight is we are willing to make all 92 of those spaces available to the public. Part of our math in this thing, and we've had to come down significantly from the 129 units that we wanted to build on this site when we initially came to town a couple of years ago. We keep doing new math equations, and at some point we have to. I think that's where we're at tonight. But we are willing to listen to whatever restrictions that you would want on the lot next door, or suggestions on how you'd want to restrict that. We don't have any problem making the whole night, because right now the way it's set up, if there's 92 spaces, we could lease 42 of those spaces to our tenants for monthly parking, right? So we are willing to give that up because we feel very confident that we have plenty of parking on our site. So we are willing to give that up. We have been talking to tenants all along. We have been talking to people about potential farmer market tenants. Again, we're not going to go down the road and start signing leases on something that we're not even finally approved yet, and I don't even know the final cost of this thing. So
all right.
We're willing to make that concession. We're willing to make whatever concession that you feel, or the city or whoever feels will keep us from doing something different with those parking stalls. So from a demand of parking, it's not going to change. From a control standpoint, we no problem giving up control spaces, and from a monitoring standpoint, we're happy.
Right, and and that affects this plan. That talks that is a mitigation in this plan, right?
That's right. Right, and that's something you have to, if we're going to do a final finding statement, resolution, that all would have to. So we're willing to give that up, and we've, I've thrown that around for the last.
And that's good to understand what our final outcome is going to be, both for the findings and the resolutions have to react to this final plan and these ideas. So that's what we're trying to define. Right. I'd asked the board about this. We talked earlier, and I talked to Corey even a little bit about this. I'll divulge some of our privileged conversation. But anyway, that we had some goals tonight. The goals were to define the plan. The goals were to talk about, for me, to talk about that alternate plan, to talk about control of the south lot parking, which we've talked about, and whether that's satisfactory or not, we'll work on that with our findings and our resolutions, and get public comments, and then we can work on our findings based on this plan. And I don't know as we're going to do that now, because we want to try and have them ready based on this final plan before the meeting so that people can review it. But I guess what I'm saying now is that maybe it's the time to open the public hearing. We've talked about it. We understand the plan. We understand about Prime's concept of ceding control of the south lot. I think maybe what we want to do is have the public hearing now. I'm going to talk to the public before it happens about some guidelines, because frankly, I don't want to be here till midnight. And I only have we want to talk about this plan, but does anybody have any objection to opening the public hearing right now?
Ron, excuse me, I sent the south elevation to Turner that you requested. If you want a quick look at that, it's up to you.
And
Sure.
Ron, we'll get all those elevations to the full board tomorrow for your review.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be excellent.
And would you make sure that they're up on the city website also?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that
Okay.
I'm clear, can
All
you
right.
identify for me which elevations have first floor residential on them?
It'd be the north elevation, Bridge Street.
Oh,
That's the only one with first
No.
floor residential.
Yeah. When I say first floor, Corey, again, I'm not including the portion that's elevated 3 feet on the south side.
So Kyle, from the building department's perspective, is that accurate that the only elevation that they need the special use permit for to authorize the first floor residential is the north elevation?
It appears so. The elevations that we've seen, I think that's accurate. I
I
wouldn't.
think I appreciate, Corey, where you're going with this. Our original application was just, I believe, first floor apartments. Granted, the special use permit is first apartments on the first floor within a PUD, really no matter where they are in the building. Our original plan, which I can share with you whenever, did have apartments on that south elevation in that same location.
Gotcha.
At that time, it was deemed that by Joe, I believe, it was that the only applicable portion for the special use permit was those along Bridge Street. And that's when we went through this exercise of, would you see an average height person walking down Bridge Street? And I can share with you those prior plans. But, it is a good idea to identify where we do have apartments on the first floor. Throughout this entire process, it has been identified as being along Bridge Street. But you and I can talk about that offline, or hopefully the
No, not necessarily. I just wanted to be clear on that if it's the only place that requires a special use permit is Bridge Street.
Well, I don't think a special use permit has like this part of the building has a special use permit, that part of the building has a special use permit.
Okay, let me state it differently. The only place that has first floor residential is on Bridge Street.
Yeah, that's our understanding.
Okay.
well, and I guess this becomes a question of semantics, Corey, and I agree. I understand what you're saying. What you're calling basement level and what you're calling first level vary in height based on Bridge Street. And frankly, if you look at the east elevation, that building where the two wings come down and it looks like 6 stories, you're seeing the basement, and there are units on what is considered the first floor of the east elevation. And there's one on the west elevation, right? At least, if not another, in that corner, in the south. And so I guess the question is, if they're going to do a special use permit request for residential uses throughout the building, we need to analyze them and make sure all of them are 8 or 10 feet above, and not call that a second floor, because otherwise, if that's the second floor on those parts, what that means is the basement becomes the first floor and you now have a 6-story building. And if you have a 6-story building, other stuff changes. So does that make sense to you, Corey, that it could be applied to any of the 4 elevations?
I was just trying to square the site plan and the building and the floor plans. The site plan clearly only
Right.
shows residential space along Bridge Street.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw the floor plans that had level 1 plan that appeared to show residential units on all elevation, on all elevations, I just wanted to be clear what the board was authorizing when it issues a special use permit. It's been
Right.
mentioned on during this meeting that what you approve approves the plan that's presented. So I just want to make sure that we understand what we're approving. And I
Yeah.
think it's clear now that it's first floor residential
Right.
along Bridge Street.
Right. And if it's different than that, then I think one of the things might be to say these apartments are considered to be first floor residential apartments according to the plan on that plan.
That makes more sense to me, Ron, just to say it's first floor. Those units on that side were always on every plan that we had. What we've done is raised them up in the air more. I think the only issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying, Dean, that we talked about that on Bridge Street, that those things are up higher than the person walking and all that. It's a similar thing on the walkway. It's a similar thing on the south end. But we do need to make sure if we're going to do a special use permit regarding first floor, residential uses on the first floor, where they all are, as Corey said.
Yeah, I agree with you though. Why not just include those in your, if it's a gray area and saying it's 3 foot above, it may be a floor and a half. Just call it first floor, and that's what we're asking for both sides.
Call it first floor. It's 10 feet in the air. Be done with it.
Yeah.
So now are you saying that there are first floor residential on all elevations, or are you
No.
saying something different?
No. It's, nothing has changed with the first floor elevations from the very beginning. We always had it along the walkway on the south side and along Bridge Street. We pulled them back along Bridge Street in a reaction to the concern about people. This is, I think, Corey, before you got involved, people be able to see in the unit. So we pulled all the units back, going down gradient. On the south side of the building, which is along the walkway, we always had units along that side. When we pulled the building in 15 feet, we still had to try to keep the same amount of parking because parking was an issue. As a reaction to that, we raised the area that were lower down by the walkway up so that we could have enough room to put parking underneath and maintain a similar amount of parking. So that's what's changed. So I guess you could say it's first floor. You could say it's not first floor on the other side. My preference would be to err to caution and just call it first floor, even though it's 10 foot above the elevation in that area.
But the March floor plans didn't show a residential unit at the southeast corner along Durkee Street.
Southeast corner.
I'm sorry, the southwest corner on the level 1 plan. The commercial seemed to go all the way to the southwest
And
corner.
those elevations reflected the building before you guys pulled it back from the boundaries, right, Dean? So that
When we brought it back from the boundaries, we added additional commercial. Then there was a concern that because there was more commercial, there was more parking needs. So fine, then we'll just put the residential in. So we put the residential back in. So that's really what has changed. But the elevation change by the walk occurred when we pulled the building in because we had to find a place. So we had to literally redesign the entire building for a third time when we pulled the building back in, which included underneath that wing. So at that point, it raised the level of the first floor units. But I agree with Ron that if we're questioning whether it is or it isn't, just say it is, and that's part of our request. I think that makes a lot more sense. That's my 2 cents, but you guys are the
And
board.
Corey, just to clarify, that change took place subsequent to the publication of the elevations from March. Those changes took place around May or June, I believe.
Which changes?
The pulling of the building back from the boundaries of the parcel, the 15-foot setbacks, and the adjustments that Prime had to make in response to that, as Dean was referring to with the parking and the apartments.
Okay, the first question I asked was whether there was residential on the first floor on the west elevation. That was the very first question I asked about this, because in the March floor plans, there was not, on the level 1 plan, it did not show a residential unit at the southwest corner. It showed commercial.
So about one single unit you're talking about?
It's
That
the
question
unit
is
that's,
specific
it's
to
a
one.
unit that, listen, and consultants correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's asking about in March, we had commercial on the corner, on that corner. Now that is where the entrance to the parking garage is. So where
Yep.
that commercial was on the first floor, Corey, on that corner is now the entrance to the parking garage, and the unit is above.
That's correct, Charlie.
All right, so there was always a residential unit there. It just wasn't shown on your level 1 plan.
No, it was
In March.
commercial all the way along Durkee Street, and then the residential started behind.
Right, that's what Corey.
And then there was a concern about the entryway. I think this came from the planning board side on the Bridge Street and the safety. So the
Okay,
building back.
I have a thought on this. We'll just put it to bed, and this is, I think, what you suggested, Dean. It's not for the zoning board just to call it all first floor and just call it a day to be safe. So why don't we get a determination from the building inspector to tell us where the first floor residential is, and then the zoning board will know what the special use permit that they're granting relates to.
Right.
Can we do that, Kyle?
Yeah. Not now, you mean after?
No, not now. No,
Yes,
not
okay.
Yeah, just so it's just
Putting
yeah, I'm
you on
not
the
putting
spot
you on the
like that
spot.
would have been rough. but-
No, I'm not putting you on the spot.
Well, we
Just
definitely can do that.
Then we'll all be clear, and if it's, and if
Yeah,
the
okay.
zoning board knows
So
what
now-
the special use permit it's granting is.
And I will say one last thing, maybe. The reason why I think there was so much focus on Bridge Street initially was because that's where the heavy impact was of those residential units on the first floor, because you had people walking right on the sidewalk.
And we change our
But
plan
in-
to mitigate that concern.
Right, in
Yeah, we
general,
speak to the building inspector's office and get a determination on that for the board.
all right. Okay, so now, to summarize, you're gonna send to all the board members elevations from March, just to be clear, and elevations now, so we can look at the differences in them, and you're gonna post them both on the city website. You're gonna get a determination from the building inspector as to what we are defining as first floor residential that needs to be voted on as part of the SUP application for that SUP.
That's
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we're gonna work on our findings, and I don't see any point in us trying to go through that paragraph by paragraph, but I do want to open this public hearing right now. I want to talk to the public about it. And I think that we'll have this, and then we can take these things, and Prime can listen to them, we can listen to them, and then we can be done for this evening and get ready for the November 16th meeting. And what I'm going to say is that I want to have a public hearing, and people will be allowed to speak. I don't have any timers. I'm not going to tell you to stop unless you start to get offensive. But I would like you to time yourself and try and keep these comments under 3 minutes. I'm also asking the public that's going to comment, if somebody said what you're going to say, you don't have to say it over again. You can say, I agree with Bill or John or Frank, or just know that that point has been made. We understand there's many people that have agree on similar points. And the other thing is that we're not here to talk about the planning board, the common council, the mayor, pilots, even though the pilot is part of our findings. We're here to talk, this public comment period is to talk about the plan as presented, and that's been discussed with 109 apartments and 10,000 feet of commercial space. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Ron,
so
can I make a
I'm gonna
request?
Yeah, go ahead.
Could we set the parameter of 3-minute time limit for, I know you made that kind of loose.
Right.
Depending on how many people are in the queue for speaking, can I request that we do keep it at 3 minutes? I have a timer and I can just kind of give you the thumbs up,
Right.
just so that you're aware of it.
Okay.
Because of the lateness of the hour.
Yeah, Kyle, do we have many people in the queue?
There are 10 in the queue right now.
I couldn't hear you.
There are 10 in the queue.
10? All right, so that'll be 30 minutes or so, basically. So yeah, let's start and we'll go. And if it starts to need modification, I'll take it upon myself to modify it how I see it as being fair. Okay? Is everybody ready? Because we're going to have a public hearing now. Okay, go ahead, Kyle. Bring in the first.
The first one is Dylan Farrington.
Okay. It doesn't. Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you don't sound like Dylan Farrington.
It's my son. He uses Zoom more than I do, so.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to point out that Prime has had just hours and hours and hours of being able to talk at boards. Thank you for giving us a chance, Ron, and thank you for being open to be flexible with time limits. I'm going to say some comments. My name is Kevin Farrington. I'm an engineer. I'm a property owner. I'm worried about the impact of my ability to do business downtown based on this plan and the parking plan. I'm going to make a couple of comments. They're going to be critical of the plan. I'm going to be respectful and courteous. I do not wish any ill will on anybody here. I don't think there's anybody here who's a bad person, but I do think you have a bad plan, and I'm going to tell you why. You've started with a bad plan from the beginning, and instead of making a good one, you've tried to spin a bad one. A good plan stands on its own merit and doesn't need explanation. We're exhausted. We're tired. We've been at this for over a year. Board members are tired, and you know what? I'm with you. I'm tired of this too. And still, we have a plan that is poorly designed, poorly developed, and false in its record and incomplete. Here we are asking questions. We must have spent an hour on elevation drawings tonight. Do you want to know what's missing from the elevation drawings? Elevations. Come on, people, look at what we're doing. A good plan doesn't need questions, and it doesn't need explanations. Okay, a good plan stands on its own merit. We've listened to things tonight like a mezzanine doesn't count. This issue was put to bed. All due respect, Charlie, but I think that's the board's decision when a matter is put to bed, quote unquote. It's nominally the first floor. And the idea that if you change the use, that it requires permission, regardless of the future law. Ron pointed out, there's no guarantee that if you were to change the farmer's market from open space to restaurant, that you would definitely require it to come back to the zoning board. The parking has been, and lastly on elevations too, your record is flawed. You submitted, whether you like this project or whether you do not, you cannot vote on this record. The elevation drawings that were submitted that compared existing buildings were flawed. They were shown to be flawed, and if you want to give me more time, I'll bring it up on the screen and I'll show you again. They showed existing buildings that were in error by in excess of 14 feet. You cannot approve a record with a knowingly false document. Another document that's flawed is the city parking plan. They say that they had 65 spaces in the county parking lot and they only had 16. And again, I'll show you the details. It's part of your record. We've shown you this to be false. You cannot approve this with a false record. So at a minimum, you need to correct the record first. And again, whether you like it or whether you don't. Lastly, on parking, and then I'll stop so that I can give other people an opportunity. Parking has been all over the map because your plan's been all over the map. In all fairness to Prime, it's not all your fault. The city painted you in a corner. You know, if you go backwards, the city tried and the co-applicants tried to segment this before this board. Fortunately for proactive citizens, we pointed out that that was illegal, okay? And in other words, you can't move your main downtown public parking from point A to point B, C, and D and do a seeker evaluation to evaluate point A only. That's illegal. So as you're looking at parking, you can't, and this is what the law is telling you and what your legal guidance is telling you, you can't segment. You must look at the citywide parking plan. And again, that document is flawed. They have a severe shortage. Last month, they came back and they decided they wanted to have a brewery, and that ballooned the spaces up for the commercial restaurant combined up from 113 to 188. And then they said, okay, never mind. Do they really not want to have a brewery? Last time, before they talked about how great a Riverside restaurant was, now they're saying that that's commercial. Well, what is it? Last month or month or two ago, Mr. Dean said this is a fictitious plan. Well, if you look at site plan requirements, use is a required element. This board does not review fictitious plans. So if it's a fictitious plan, I would say go home, figure out what you want to do, and when you have a real plan, come back and we'll evaluate it. And lastly, on parking, if you look at the PUD requirement for shared parking, it is exactly that, is for shared parking where there is multi-uses on a site. I would argue that the deviation from standard code parking does not apply here. And the reason is because if you look at PUD, it's when you have multi-uses on a site and shared parking on a site. The idea is very simple. Somebody leaves for work, you have a dentist's office, somebody comes and goes to the dentist, they leave the dentist closes, people come home from work, you're sharing the parking. This site does not share the parking. Your residential parking is locked and gated. Your commercial parking is separate and it's shared with the public, but that's not the definition of shared by the use.
Okay.
So in closing, a good plan stands on its own legs. The reason we're still here at 10 o'clock at night and we're all exhausted is because instead of developing a good plan, they're trying to spin a bad one. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next.
John Seaton.
Okay, John, 3 minutes. Thank you. Sorry to be restricting on time, but it's what we got to do. And you look muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to thank you zoning board for all your hard work, and it's hard work, and I just want to thank you for that. I own 43 Durkee Street, which is probably one of the most properties that will be affected the most out of really anybody in this plan. I beg you folks that we need geographic parking for that geographic area. You have Maui North, you have the hair salon, you have the co-op, you have affordable furniture, You have the bistro on the corner. In my building, we have a financial planner, senior citizens going to doctor's offices, etc. I have 50 employees in my building. That's not counting people going to utilize the building. It is imperative to have parking in that geographic area for the folks that have taken the time to create a business in our city, and you should be respectful to that. If there's any inconvenience that's going to be, it should not be to the existing people that have raised families and have paid taxes in this community for many generations. If there's going to be an inconvenience, it should be to this applicant. They just spent $2 million on this Arnie Pavone parking lot. If Dean needs extra parking, I would think that he would have no problem for his people to take a 10-minute walk or a 5-minute walk and give him some designated parking spaces in the Arnie Pavone lot. It is imperative to keep parking in that geographic area for the geographic buildings. So please be extremely sensitive to this. We don't need any other business to be going out of business because of parking. And it's ludicrous to think that my competitor coming in is going to own all the parking and I'm going to have none. It's blatantly unfair. I beg you to keep that in consideration. Secondly, the farmer's market, that's nothing more than a pavilion. Let me suggest that you take that pavilion down and in that template, create more parking. The farmer's market, unfortunately, is being moved down to the sewage treatment plant, which is a big mistake. But it's nothing more than a pavilion that should be taken down because we've seen so many plans that have manipulated the parking and putting, in essence, 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. Dean, we want you in our community. We want your business, but you need to be respectful. You need to be respectful to the people that live here and not come into our community and put your knee on my neck. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next.
There are no more hand raised. Oh, a demo.
Okay, you have 3 minutes if you don't mind. We're trying to keep this so we can get done.
Sure. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. This is Debbie Moma. I just wanted to mention, just for the record, again, thank you to everybody on the call tonight. I know it's been a long night. No one had any other comments from the public for any other application before the Zoning Board of Appeals tonight. And I think the public is speaking out about this plan because it's not working for the public. I heard Ron, and will respect your request not to rehash old info. A few new and relevant points from tonight, however, include, Dean admitting and confirming suspicion that the city contacted them before the bid. It explains why there was only 13 business days between the information session and proposals being due for this humongous $25+ million development. Homeowners on small projects of less than $5,000 typically give more than that amount of time. It's just
Listen, wait, we really need to, I understand it, but we've seen this and I'm not trying to cut you off, but I am. We've seen this and talked about it before, specifically tonight.
Yep.
People are to talk about this particular plan. We understand all those questions about that in the pilot. And I'm really going to keep it to that. We could go on for 5 hours about it. I'm sorry, but so go ahead and finish about this plan.
Yes, sir. So the hearing was to discuss the apartments on the first floor. My question before the zoning board of appeals is if Prime can do that, will the city allow us to do that as well? We have 2 properties on Bridge Street. It would be certainly easier to rent those first floor apartments or spaces as apartments than it is currently as commercial tenants. Charlie mentioned that they've redone their proposal. It's been submitted multiple times. Although we feel bad about that effort at points, if you reference the original RFP document, had it been paid close attention to, it would have saved a lot of time, frustration, and waste. The city has requested a couple concessions. I think that they're reasonable. I don't believe that Prime should end up owning all of the parking in that general area and increase the demand to the point of breaking our backs. The current plans appears to short our community of a lot of spaces, and the city's not replaced them, and therefore that location and those numbers of what looks to be 357 spaces is going to be a huge hindrance to our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Next.
Scott Allen.
Hello, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Scott. Please just discuss this plan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, board members. I just first comment, this meeting would have been a lot shorter if you had a complete application before you. Spent a lot of time going over things that should have been before you in a single set of plans. AES Northeast, I have a need for 30 plus parking spaces. You heard John Seaton say that he needs 50 just for staff, for employees at his building, plus customers. Let's call it 55, call mine 30. That's 85 parking spaces right there that are needed. I am opposed to giving the surface parking lot to Prime. I think that should be kept with the city. I think that'll result in squandering an opportunity to later build a parking garage in that surface parking lot, which would then allow infill parking of the Court Street parking lot, or infill development building of the Court Street parking lot, as well as the City Hall Place parking lot. So again, I think this city squandering opportunity for future development and has all their eggs in this one basket, and I'm opposed to it. And on behalf of Plattsburgh Citizens Coalition, we are still opposed to the project. Since its inception, basically there's been very little change. I'm sure Prime sees them as big changes, costly changes they've made, but all in all, there's really been very little change since the inception of this project, and we are still opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, very much. Next.
There are no hands at this time.
Who was it?
There are no hands.
Oh, there are no hands. Okay. At this point, nobody else is asking to speak. We have a public hearing open. I'm going to leave it for now, open for now, in case we decide that we want to open up more public comments in case the plan changes in some way. Is that going to affect anything about the way we proceed from now on? I'm actually simply going to adjourn because that doesn't close it. Is that correct, Corey? Can I
Yes.
adjourn the public?
Simply
Is adjourning the public hearing
adjourn.
not the same?
Correct.
What's
You can
that?
adjourn the hearing. Yes.
Okay.
You may adjourn the
I'm
hearing.
I'm going to adjourn the hearing and then we can, and there's several reasons, one of which is I don't want to create any timelines, if you want to know the truth, that the closing of it might create. But secondly, we can then talk about how we might take future public comments, and especially once the plans and maybe this will clarify for some people, once all of the elevations and plans are back up online, and as we get our resolutions up and our findings up, so that we can make sure that that the public's had their chance to comment, just like we did tonight. And I think it was useful to be able to do that. I'm not saying we heard necessarily anything different or new, but I know that if I was a member of the public, I'd be grateful to be able to participate in. So I think we'll do that. It's about what I thought it was going to be. I think we have our work ahead of us. I've been working on, and now I have a clearer vision of the findings, frankly, and we will work with our council to prepare findings and resolutions regarding both SUPs and try and get them done as quickly as we can. I've got some time to dedicate to it because it's pandemic. I can't do anything anyway. And I will work on that, and we will stay in correspondence so that everybody, the applicant knows and the board members know what we're doing, and hopefully we'll get these prepared fairly soon. Somewhat of a draft to start to circulate amongst everyone. Does anybody else have anything else regarding this before we actually adjourn this portion of our meeting, and then we can move to adjournment of our meeting? Does anybody else have anything they want to say? Dean, go ahead.
So one of the things we talked about tonight was, again, and it was a concern that the public brought up tonight. We're not looking to control that lot. And we're more than happy to say that all 90 spaces can be for Mr. Sniden and the other folks in the area. If there's a mechanism that somebody wants to suggest, my concern is we've been at this for a long time. If we now go and we're going to change, okay, who owns a lot? Now we got a subdivision. Now we got to go back and in front, in front of 5 other boards again, there was an RFP put out, a proposal to develop that entire lot, and that's what we brought forward with a lot less parking demand. We're willing to give up the 92 spaces. We're willing to make up whatever assurances that everybody needs to feel comfortable with that. But that's part of what our finding statement needs to say. So I kind of do need to talk a little bit more about that, and maybe between Charlie and Corey, what do we need to do to make that happen?
Yeah, and I want to think about that and talk as a board about that a little bit. But that's a little more complex than
it is.
What I would do now, and I'm going to tell you that I take under advisement very strongly what you've said. Matt had at one point a little while ago had mentioned that concept. What assurances we can do and how that does brings up some whole other questions about paid parking, and we haven't received correspondence about why it does or doesn't need to be paid parking, all kinds of stuff that is really outside of your plan. And I think that we met tonight our goals, which were to define the plan, get public comment, discuss your concept of controlling or freeing up 92 spaces or whatever it is, and so on. And we are, there was something about the board having me do this, but I'm going to say that I don't need unless the board wants to vote on it for some reason, but that I feel that we as a board are enjoined to prepare findings together and resolutions together, which we will do in our normal communication mechanisms with Corey, so as not to violate, however carefully we have to do that, so as not to violate open meeting law. And get stuff prepared, reacting to this final plan, your concept of the parking and the south lot, and our reaction to the parking, and then we'll come back, and as we get it ready, we'll communicate. Does that make sense? Charlie, does that make sense to you? You're muted.
Yes, that makes sense. And, you know, if the board and your internal correspondences has ideas of enforcement mechanisms or conditions that you would like to run through past Prime, you know, the proper means of communications would be between myself and Corey. So we would be open to that, and we can go from there.
Thank you. I think that's fine, and I agree with that, and I don't have a problem with you guys. But what I would tell you is that the applicant is the city of Plattsburgh. Matt, as I believe the representative for the city, is community development director, and anything that we do would go through from us to Matt. No secret, just the proper channel. I do this in construction all the time, and for distribution to your team.
Sounds good.
Good. All right. So I would say, unless the board has any questions, we're not voting on anything. Are we set with the Prime application for this evening? Does anybody want to go further? Okay, you didn't think that was funny, did you? All right, so we're set with Prime, and all we're going to do now, Corey, if you could just stick around for a minute, is we're going to do some other internal business like minutes and adjourn.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yep.
Dean, thank you very much. Steve, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
thank you, guys. Matt, thanks very much.
Thanks.
Take care.
So,
Be safe.
left here should be, when we're all done, Megan, PJ, the board members, Lisa, Kyle, and Corey. And, oh, and Ethan, you can stay. So, okay, so we did that. It went a little longer than I wanted, but it, that's the plan, I guess. That's the plan. And that's what we're going to work on, unless we can come up with something. I had somebody texted me, it doesn't matter who.
Hey, Ron, Turner's still on?
Yeah.
Turner is still on?
He's not really on. He's every time he leaves, this happens every single time he leaves the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Stays in here,
He's
his
not
specific one.
Well, that's okay. Somebody texted me to say, why is PJ still there? Because you only have 4 members, and I wrote back and assured him that the same 5 people are doing it. And I had said that earlier, that Ellie was going to be able to watch and or catch up with this, and she can hear all of it. She surely can participate. That we have not changed that. So anyway, they said okay, just so you know. So we did Prime, and I think we're going to work on our stuff, Corey, and in case you don't know, Megan, I assume you do, and PJ, you know, sometimes Corey and I and Scott and or Kathleen correspond with each other about stuff before we send it out to everybody. We may do some of that to try and get these findings things to a point where they can be commented on by everyone. And I've got a bit, I'm probably the one that I sent out, I would disregard because I'm going to go through in the next, not tomorrow or Thursday, but, or Wednesday, whatever, but this week, and strike out everything that I think doesn't matter and put in what I think does, and still put it in red or italics or something and say, here's the stuff that I think is important, and we can work on the findings. And then I think separately, we should start to write a resolution, not the resolution we got before, written and submitted to us by the city originally, by the applicant, but our resolution of how we're going to do an affirmative resolution for the SUPs, and then it either gets approved or doesn't. If it doesn't get approved, then we would do a negative motion. So that's the plan. I think that everybody understands we're not having special meetings, and the goal is to be able to get this done on the 16th of November, assuming we get all of our questions, which we will have, and have to send to Matt to distribute to that team, answered. And we get all the elevations we need. So
Ron,
is
can I
everybody
just
set
make
on?
one quick point of clarification, and this goes
Yeah.
back to a question that you asked maybe at the pre-meeting and also just referenced now. What I meant by a positive resolution was just whatever resolution you put forward, whether it's a motion to approve or a motion to deny. If whatever motion is put on the floor that does not obtain a vote of the affirmative vote of the majority of the zoning board, then I would ask for the alternative motion to be made. So for example,
Right.
if you move to deny and that motion did not get a majority, I would then ask for someone to make a motion to approve or vice versa. That's what I meant by a positive motion.
Yeah, not a problem. So
So
either way, we
Corey, you basically want us to approve something, not just disapprove,
Correct.
is what you're
Correct.
saying.
I don't
is-
want a motion just to fail. I mean, if a motion for the zoning board, if you fail to obtain a majority, that is a denial for a zoning board of appeals. But I think it would be better for you to actually affirmatively vote on whatever motion you seek to make.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that makes sense. Right. In the end, we're going to approve an approval or approve a denial. Okay. So we'll work on this. I think, by the way, otherwise, the little ones, it was kind of fun, wasn't it, to just have non-controversial, plain old variances that we could just all be, touchy-feely about and everything. It was great. I'm not kidding either. It was pleasant to not have all this controversy and criticism. I am going to monitor. I just want you to know still the new law, because aside from crime and aside from whether or not they can submit or not, and I had sent you my speech or comment at the meeting, and I went first, but it is a really concerning problem. It has a basis that makes it useful for water treatment plants or publicly owned things by the city, but it's really a problem. And I think it's indicative because 3 people voted not to send it to the county. So the whole council's not just trying to do this, it seems like. Anyway, other than that, the only other thing I know about is that we have August meeting minutes. Did anybody have any comments on them?
I'm going to sign off, guys. I don't think you need me for this. Good night.
No, we don't, Corey. Thank you very much. Did anybody have any comments on the August meeting minutes? Have you had a chance to read them?
I've read them. I'll make a motion to approve the August 17th minutes as 2020 as written.
Okay. Do I have a second? Come on, somebody.
I wasn't here, just
TJ.
to
Oh,
FYI.
you were. You did, Kath? Okay.
I wasn't here, I just wanted to point that out.
Oh, okay, hold on. So,
Says it right in the header, she was absent.
what's that?
Nothing.
Oh,
Was that your tumble?
No, that was my vacation,
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
my
Well,
annual
well,
August retreat.
right, but we kept you informed, didn't we? So, TJ, did you say you seconded the motion? Because you were there.
Even though I'm an alternate, you want me to? Is that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Second.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes? Aye. Okay, thank you. Now, does anybody have anything else? If not, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn, and I want to
Make a
thank
motion to
Kyle and
adjourn.
Ethan. Second,
Kathleen, okay, there you go.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, bye-bye. Aye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, thanks, man.